Chapter 26. With the addition of Baby Dragon, the wolfhound became obviously busier at night. This energetic little guy is extremely energetic, and he sneaks away from time to time when John is not paying attention. Every time he is brought back by the wolfhound, but he never changes his ways. To be honest, John likes this feeling very much when living in the wild. Although humans are essentially social creatures, the more people there are, the more secure and stable they will feel. However, with the company of the wolfhounds, he does not feel lonely. Unlike living in a town, he has to worry about the unknown tomorrow every day. Here, there are countless foods, and even if John lives here for a year or two, he can hardly spend much money. However, in terms of improving the strength of Pokémon, the wild environment will be insufficient. Pokémon not only need hard training and balanced nutrition, but also some special items that can promote growth. Therefore, this is also an important reason why, even though wild Pokémon fight for food every day, few of them can successfully evolve into their final evolutionary form. However, the environment in the wild is also a major problem that needs to be overcome. For example, even if John has made a fire, the temperature is getting lower and lower as the night deepens. Baby Dragon has just been born and cannot adapt to such low temperatures. After drinking the night milk, it squeezed hard in John's arms and fell asleep comfortably. The big wolfhound also fell asleep soon, leaving Gyarados to guard the night today. After a night of rest, John set off again in the morning of the next day with the big wolfhound. Their goal is already within reach, and the surrounding vegetation is slowly decreasing, as if it was eroded by the wasteland. The big wolfhound has been in front, trying to find a better way to go. In the end, they successfully passed through the forest and reached their destination smoothly. Anyway, the target is no longer the giant jaw ants, so John immediately changed his plan to a journey to find ore. The sky was filled with heavy clouds, like a huge grey curtain, which made people feel a little breathless. John couldn't wait to run to the open space, but when he finally saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but burst out a swear word. It was not that they were about to reach their destination. In front of them was a steep canyon, as if the earth was split by a huge axe, and it was bottomless. He was still at a high place, and the wind was whistling in his ears, as if it was going to push him into the abyss. The cliffs on both sides were as straight as a knife, with jagged rocks and a ferocious breath. Even the big wolfhound next to him couldn't help but shake his head helplessly, and its grey hair fluttered in the wind. However, it was still very responsible to take the lead in checking where the safe position was. After several long hours, the clouds in the sky became lower and lower, as if a torrential rain would pour down at any time. Finally, we successfully reached the bottom of the canyon. The land under our feet was covered with sharp gravel and withered weeds, and there was a rotten smell all around. However, this situation was caused by my choice of taking a detour. However, there was nothing we could do about it. After all, safety is always the first priority. John's luck was pretty good, and he found a cave not far away. The stone walls around the cave were covered with dark green moss, and some unknown ferns grew tenaciously from the cracks in the rocks. Generally speaking, precious ores are often in such caves. According to the trainer who had fought with him before, there was an extremely powerful Pokémon here, and I don't know if it would be in this cave. Moreover, many rock-type or ground-type Pokémon have the habit of collecting ores. They will take those ores for themselves, consume those that are useful to them, and collect those that are useless as treasures. He took out a flashlight from his backpack, turned on the switch, and the bright light illuminated the front. He walked carefully towards the cave entrance. Some tiny mosquitoes were flying around the cave entrance. The air in the cave was filled with a damp and stale smell. Water dripped from the wall from time to time, making a crisp ticking sound. Fortunately, once there is danger, the alert wolfhound will find it in advance. The interior of the cave is very deep and extremely dark, but fortunately there is almost no water on the ground. After a while, a slope of about 30 degrees was seen. From a distance, two roads were forked at the end of the slope. Cave entrance one was relatively large and dark inside, and the other was about the same height as John and looked relatively narrow. He decisively chose the smaller cave entrance at the back. This road was very flat, and it could be seen that the cave entrance here had been formed for quite a long time. Occasionally there were some glittering minerals on the stone wall, but a closer look showed that they were not the precious ores he expected. However, along the way, he did not find any valuable ores that could be sold. No hurry, the cave is still very deep. John tried hard to suppress his inner uneasiness, he really needed money now. In order to make Baby Dragon evolve earlier, the cost required is extremely high. If it is based on the natural growth progress of Baby Dragon, it may not be able to evolve into Dragonite even after 10 years. After all, the higher the potential of the Pokémon, the more difficult the process of its growth and formation will be. Only after Baby Dragon successfully evolves into Dragonite will its strength have a qualitative leap. Therefore, family and background are particularly important in the growth of Pokémon trainers. Almost no one can successfully become the four kings of a region by relying solely on their own strength. The cultivation process of Pokémon is often accompanied by a large amount of capital flow. From Pokémon food, medicine, training equipment, to the cost of participating in various competitions, etc., all require strong financial support. Without funding, it is extremely difficult to achieve significant achievements on this road. This is why in this world, although the population is large, there are relatively few people who choose to become Pokémon trainers. There are tens of thousands of people participating in each region in each league conference, but in the end, the number of people who can successfully defeat 8 gyms and qualify for the league competition will not even exceed 1,000. In addition to those who were unfortunately killed in accidents on the way, most of the rest are those who do not really have enough strength to carefully cultivate their own Pokémon. Perhaps because of the lack of funds, or because of the lack of professional guidance and resources, they can only helplessly give up halfway on this challenging road. Chapter 27. No matter how deep the cave is, it should have an end. John thought so while continuing to grope forward in the dark. However, he felt that he had explored hundreds of meters in this deep cave, but strangely he didn't even encounter a wild Pokémon. This is really very strange, but on second thought, it is better not to encounter it, so as to avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble. At this moment, John's eyes suddenly appeared in front of the weak light of the flashlight. His eyes lit up instantly, and he immediately walked over quickly, and quickly took out his laptop and began to compare them carefully one by one through the pictures. For a while, precious gems such as diamond, ruby, sapphire, firestone, waterstone, thunderstone, etc. appeared in his mind. But the most precious ones are those special gems that can help Pokémon significantly improve their strength. It is said that a few years ago, someone had unearthed a firestone full of rich fire energy, and this discovery caused quite a stir. In the end, this precious firestone was bought by a nobleman with short silver hair who did not want to reveal his name at a staggering 8-digit price. You know, the market price of an ordinary firestone is only about 100,000 alliance coins. As for the quality of the firestone bought at this 8-digit price, almost no one knows the specific situation. Moreover, the mysterious buyer will certainly not show off easily. However, after John carefully checked the computer for a while, he was extremely disappointed to find that these were just some worthless ores. These stones have no effect on Pokémon, and the price is pitifully low. If these things are sold, they can only be exchanged for tens of thousands of alliance coins at most. But there is no way for me to carry so many heavy stones away. If I can, even the smallest profit is still a profit. As the saying goes, no matter how small the mosquito is, it is still meat. John couldn't hold it in any longer and started to curse. He felt that if he didn't make money, he would be a bastard, and he was just that miserable bastard. However, John still took out the largest stone from the pile of stones and released Baby Dragon. Baby Dragon, from today, in order to fly as soon as possible, we have to start hard training. John tried his best to fool Baby Dragon, but when Baby Dragon heard that he could fly as soon as possible, he couldn't help but nodded excitedly, and then directly put the stone on his head. Fortunately, there were some grooves on the stone, which just caught its head. But John knew in his heart that if he encountered a better stone later, when the backpack couldn't fit it, he could only throw this stone away mercilessly. Pokémon is the darling of this world, and this sentence is indeed not wrong at all. Baby Dragon was born only 1 day ago, and he was able to carry dozens of kilograms of ore tenaciously. Although it would feel exhausted, it always gritted its teeth and persisted for its dream of flying in the sky as soon as possible. John didn't know if there were other exits in the cave, so for now, he could only collect the ores that could be sold. However, God will not let down those who work hard. After walking forward for a while, John really found a small piece of gold. However, it seems that this gold nugget seemed to be abandoned here by other Pokémon. You know, gold has no effect on improving the strength of Pokémon. At best, it can only be processed into exquisite jewelry that humans like, and the price is also calculated and sold by grams. Overall, the price is much more expensive than ordinary fire stones. John carefully weighed the gold nugget in his hand and estimated that it could be sold for 200,000 alliance coins. I'm rich! I'm rich! John was ecstatic. At this moment, what could be more exciting than this way of making money quickly? Fortunately, this place is not the only way between the two cities, and there are very few trainers passing by here, so this cave can be preserved so well. Moreover, I have only explored such a small part, and it will take a long time before I can meet up with Xiaoao. John has made up his mind to rest here temporarily. Anyway, I have bought a lot of nutritional supplements, and if I explore the nearby tree fruits, I will definitely be able to make high-quality energy cubes. If it really doesn't work, then I can only return to Qinjue City in advance. With this piece of gold, John's fighting spirit instantly burned like a raging fire. He quickly and carefully put the gold into his backpack, ready to speed up the pace and explore the entire cave more deeply. John threw the ore on the head of the baby dragon without hesitation. Now he no longer needs it, because he firmly believes that there are more wealth waiting for him to discover. Watching the baby dragon running happily in the limited visible light in the entire cave, he couldn't wait to use the rocket headbutt when he saw something shiny. But John didn't have the energy to sort out the data for the baby dragon now, not to mention that he didn't think it was necessary. He estimated that the current baby dragon's combat effectiveness might be comparable to the fire chicken when Xiaoao just got it. However, the structure of the cave is still very solid and strong. John couldn't help but regret his mistake of not bringing excavation tools. In desperation, he could only rely on the attacks of the wolfhound and the baby dragon to find the hidden ore. As for the Gyarados, it was already difficult for it to move in this cave with its huge body. It could only pass the next intersection and then look for a cave with a larger space. However, hard work really paid off, and he successfully found several precious stones, 2 fire stones, 1 thunder stone, and 3 water stones. All in all, he had earned a full 1,000,000 alliance coins today. It smells so good. No wonder Daigo likes to dig ore so much. Although he is not doing it for money, this wonderful feeling like picking up money is really intoxicating. John happily touched the head of the baby dragon and the wolfhound, and said excitedly, "When we return to the city, I will give you extra meals and nutritional supplements." Now John has become full of confidence because he has money to talk. He feels that he will soon be able to buy some growth-accelerating potions for the baby dragon. As for Wolfhound and Gyarados, we need to think carefully about how to improve their qualifications. Chapter 28. Who's there? John suddenly felt a heavy sound of footsteps, but the Wolfhound was immersed in the joy of finding ore at this time, and didn't notice that someone was approaching. Boom! A hot jet of flame rushed towards him, and John reacted quickly and immediately trotted away. Suddenly, the heat wave rolled, and the air around seemed to be ignited instantly. Then, a sturdy hound appeared in John's sight, and with it appeared a man with green hair and a red turtleneck short-sleeved shirt. The man's eyes swept over, and when he saw the baby dragon at John's feet, his eyes immediately showed greed. "Boy, hand over your baby dragon, I can spare your life, even if it is a punishment for you disturbing my work," the man said to John viciously. "Are you a Pokémon hunter?" John frowned, and his hand tightly grasped the Pokémon ball of Gyarados, ready to throw it out at any time. Ordinary Pokémon, like the ones John had thrown to the black market before, only sold 4 of them for 100,000 in total. And precious creatures like Dragonite can be sold at sky-high prices, and they will be quickly taken away as soon as they appear. After all, as a quasi-god in the Hone region, Dragonite is loved by many people. It is powerful and a dragon type, and the most important thing is that it is the main force of the 4 heavenly kings Genji. With the blessing of various honors, it is almost impossible to find Dragonite in the wild. Therefore, John's first reaction was that the man opposite was a Pokémon hunter. Damn, I have obviously taken a detour, but I still met him. Now John has connected the traces of the truck tires with the man in front of him. According to him, he might have been catching Pokémon in the cave just now, and he kept hitting the cave, causing his plan to fail. Or maybe he was preparing to escape, afraid of encountering powerful Pokémon in the cave, and was preparing to evacuate, but was disrupted by himself. Sure enough, money is not so easy to make. Of course, this statement is not accurate here, but John didn't know what words to use to describe the current situation. So what if it is? So what if it isn't? The man crossed his arms and looked arrogant, as if he had taken John in his hands. In his opinion, the wolfhound was no threat at all. John was extremely nervous now, but he also knew that it would be useless to be nervous at this moment. Baby Dragon was his beloved baby, how could he give it up so easily? What's more, he knew that he couldn't expect the Pokémon hunter to be merciful. Even if he handed over Baby Dragon, he would definitely die. In that case, I won't show mercy, Wolfhound, use the evil wave. John shouted loudly. Upon hearing this, the Wolfhound gathered powerful energy in its mouth and suddenly released an evil wave forward. The black energy swept towards Houndoom. Block it with jet flames. The green-haired man was not panicked, still smiling and responding calmly. Hero immediately opened his bloody mouth, and raging fire gushed out of his mouth instantly. The hot flames seemed to burn the air and went straight to the evil wave. When the evil wave and the jet flame collided violently, the whole cave was shaken slightly by these two powerful forces, and the broken stones on the cave wall fell down. John was shocked and dared not let the battle continue. He himself did not have a ground-type Pokémon to dig a hole to escape. If the cave collapsed because of their battle, the consequences would be disastrous. Big Wolfhound, use Shadow Ball to attack the man next to him. John gave the order without hesitation, which made the man look at him with admiration. Unlike the traditional timid Pokémon trainers who only know how to attack Pokémon blindly without understanding the principle of capturing the thief first. Harriga, let's use Shadow Ball too. The man shouted quickly. Harriga opened his mouth in time and easily blocked the Shadow Ball of the Wolfhound. Waves of thick smoke billowed up, and when the smoke dissipated, John's figure disappeared. Damn, I was fooled. The man looked at the place where the baby dragon was standing, which was now empty, and felt annoyed. However, he quickly reacted and immediately chased after it. John had already fled the scene quickly when the explosion occurred. Fortunately, he had collected all the ore he had dug, and the baby dragon had returned to the Pokémon ball at this time. He was able to easily block his Wolfhound, which is enough to prove that Houndoom's strength is at least elite level. He didn't know how strong this Pokémon hunter was, so he could only choose to dodge first. With the marks left by the Wolfhound along the way, John quickly came to the cave entrance. It was already night, and the sky was still drizzling. Such weather conditions were not bad, at least it could dilute his breath a little. After all, Houndoom's sense of smell was also very sensitive. Come out! Gyarados, use the Destruction Death Ray on the cave entrance. John shouted. As soon as Gyarados appeared, he used a powerful Destruction Death Ray on the top of the cave, and the dazzling light quickly buried the cave entrance. Then he quickly ran in one direction. John knew that the Pokémon hunter would definitely not let him go easily. Now he was a hot commodity in the eyes of the other party. Just after John left in a hurry, a deafening explosion suddenly came from the direction of the cave, as if the whole earth was shaking. Coming out so soon? John quickly pulled the big Wolfhound and hid behind a huge stone. As soon as the man came out, he snorted coldly, his face was so gloomy that it seemed that water could drip out. Houndoom quickly sniffed the air around him carefully, and then shook his head helplessly at the man. The man was furious and punched the wall beside him fiercely. A deep dent was instantly smashed on the wall. He said viciously. Houndoom, keep tracking. You don't have to come back if you can't find that kid. Houndoom groaned, his voice full of grievances. As a fire-type Pokémon, it was uncomfortable on rainy days. But it didn't dare to disobey the master's order, so it had to start running with heavy steps. Then, the man released the toucan, which spread its wide wings, flew into the air, and began to hover in the air for reconnaissance. John's heart was beating rapidly, and his breathing became rapid. The shadow of the rock enveloped him, temporarily providing him with a corner to avoid the wind. He and the Wolfhound clung to the rock tightly, not daring to breathe, and vigilantly observing the movements around them. Chapter 29. John always felt a sense of déjà vu about this man. The familiar face seemed to be looming in the depths of his memory, but he just couldn't remember where he had seen him. Could it be a character that appeared in the anime he watched before? For a moment, his thoughts fell into confusion, but he couldn't figure it out. But now is not the time to entangle this. He still needs to figure out how strong he is. Otherwise, if he just hides blindly, he doesn't know how long he can hide. He has been hiding behind the stone carefully, but he is not far from the cave entrance. As for why he didn't run far, it was because it was really hard to see the road clearly in this dark night. If he used a flashlight to illuminate, it would undoubtedly expose his position directly. Moreover, the man should have a car, but he didn't know where he parked it. But it is also possible that there are other entrances to the cave, otherwise, such a big car, he couldn't miss it. He didn't believe that this Pokémon hunter would park the car properly and then walk over slowly. Combined with the work he said before, it should be to capture Pokémon inside and transport them directly for convenience. At this time, the rain began to fall heavier and heavier, and the big raindrops fell cracklingly. However, for John, who has rich experience in outdoor survival, getting wet in the rain has long been commonplace. In his previous life, he often got wet in the rain because he didn't have time to build a shelter or the shelter he built was not strong enough. Over time, he had long been immune to getting wet in the rain. Just as he was immersed in contemplation, the big wolfhound suddenly bared his teeth and roared in a low voice, and then jumped out without hesitation. John's heart clicked and he secretly said that it was not good. He was discovered, and it was so fast. Sure enough, it was a wise choice to put a dog in the wild. No wonder this Pokémon hunter would bring a canine Pokémon with him like himself. So you didn't go far. There was a toucan hovering over the man's head. John was too lazy to complain. The toucan was really a Pokémon used exclusively by villains. However, he thought about it and thought that his wolfhound was the same. As the starting Pokémon of the Magma team, wasn't it often used by villains? How about it? Hand over the baby dragon and I can let you go. The man spoke again, with a contemptuous tone, obviously not taking John seriously. I don't know if he was too arrogant or really had the absolute crushing power. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Let me go? How about this, you leave all your Pokémon behind, and I'll spare your life. John sneered and looked at him with mockery in his eyes. At this point, escaping is useless, and the only choice is to fight head-on. Come out, Gyarados. With John's shout, Gyarados appeared from the Pokeball again. Inside the Pokeball, it has been paying close attention to the situation outside, and naturally knows the severity of the situation at this time. Roar! Gyarados roared, and with its powerful intimidation characteristics, it successfully frightened toucans and houndoom. Their bodies trembled involuntarily, and a trace of fear was revealed in their eyes. Useless thing! The man was surprised that John actually had a powerful and difficult-to-tame Pokémon like Gyarados, and then noticed the cowardly reaction of his Pokémon, and couldn't help cursing. It's rare to see someone who insults his own Pokémon. John curled his lips in disdain, his eyes full of contempt. But the man didn't care at all. Rare doesn't mean there are none. If the Pokémon is not useful, just sell it on the black market and replace it with another one. He said it carelessly, which made John feel that he was extremely arrogant. Wasn't he afraid that his Pokémon would turn against him at the last minute? But John obviously thought too much. Houndoom and Toucan were still staring at him with hostility. Sure enough, Pokémon hunters are like this. They all treat Pokémon as pure tools. Only those with extremely strong talents will choose to cultivate their own Pokémon with heart. Gyarados, use Water Cannon on Houndoom. Legacy, use Shadow Ball on Toucan. Since the Pokémon on the opposite side didn't care how their trainers treated them, John didn't waste time arguing with him. The longer he delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. He didn't know if this man had any companions lying in ambush nearby. Get out of the way. Man, quickly give orders. Toucans and Houndoom were extremely fast and dodged the attacks of Gyarados and Gyarados in an instant. Houndoom, big explosion. Toucans, use Destruction Beam. The man quickly ordered again. Big Explosion is a powerful move of fire Pokémon. Although it will reduce its power in rainy days, it is still amazing. However, water overcomes fire. Is this man crazy to release this move on Gyarados? Gyarados, use Water Cannon. Gyarados, dodge and use Lightning Flash on Houndoom. Instead of struggling to deal with toucans flying in the air, John might as well concentrate on getting rid of Houndoom first. Gyarados' Water Cannon is like a fierce water dragon, directly passing through Houndoom's big explosion. The collision of water and fire instantly produces a lot of steam. Then the Wolfhound rushed over like a flash of lightning, knocking Houndoom away with a thunderous force. Gyarados, use Water Tail. Gyarados, keep an eye on Toucan's movements. Houndoom, use Shadow Ball. Toucans use Divine Bird. Gyarados suddenly rushed forward, facing Houndoom's Shadow Ball, and swept it with a sharp water tail. Houndoom screamed and hit the hard stone directly. Its two eyes had turned into circles and lost its ability to fight. The remaining toucans was about to attack, but was blocked by the Wolfhound's Shadow Claw. After being hit by the Shadow Ball, Gyarados only had some minor damage to its scales, but no serious injuries were found. Go, Shakira's. A Pokémon covered with a grey-blue hard shell, with 4 sharp horns on both sides and 3 small horns on its forehead appeared on the battlefield. Shakira's. John finally remembered who this person was. It was Aaron, the Pokémon hunter who forced Musashi and Kojiro to release their Pokémon. However, Shakira's has not evolved into Banjira's yet, so its strength is not too strong. Moreover, its attribute of 4 times weak to water, how could it be a match for Gyarados? As long as the Wolfhound provides a good cover, John is almost invincible when this Pokémon hunter has no other Pokémon. Gradually, John's mentality changed. In the anime, this Pokémon hunter Aaron had no partners from beginning to end, and was easily defeated by Zai's group and Miss Junsha. Chapter 30. Shakira's, use Sandstorm. Aaron shouted loudly. Shakira's shook his body, and a sandstorm suddenly rose around him. The flying sand magically blocked the falling rain, forming a unique harsh environment around him. John didn't care and shouted confidently. Gyarados, use water cannon on Shakira's. Wolfhound, find an opportunity to sneak attack. Gyarados opened his huge mouth, and a powerful water cannon rushed straight towards Shakira's. Aaron shouted hurriedly, Shakira's, get out of the way. However, Shakira's movements were slightly slow, and he was instantly hit by the fierce water cannon and retreated repeatedly, leaving deep marks on the ground. Aaron's face became extremely ugly, and he shouted hysterically, Shakira's, use quicksand hell. Shakira's slammed the ground hard, creating rolling quicksand, trying to trap John's Pokémon. The Wolfhound was agile and jumped flexibly. It avoided the quicksand like a ghost and rushed towards Shakira's. Big Wolfhound, use Ice Fangs. John seized this brief opportunity and gave the order decisively. The Wolfhound bit Shakira's body with its teeth that were a little cold, and Shakira's immediately roared in pain. Damn it! Aaron's forehead was bulging with veins. Toucans, attack the Wolfhound from the air. Use crazy attacks. The toucans swooped down quickly, and the sharp beak like a knife rushed straight to the Wolfhound. John's eyes condensed. Gyarados, use the water tail to repel the toucans. The tail of the Gyarados was carrying a strong water force, and it swung violently, instantly knocking the toucans away. The toucans lost their balance in midair and rolled awkwardly. At this time, Shakira's had turned into ice. Aaron gritted his teeth, a mad look appeared on his face, and suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it at John, and at the same time took out a Pokémon ball. Come back, Shakira's. Toucan. After taking back both Pokémon, he glared at John fiercely. Boy, don't be too proud. Then, he pressed the trigger without hesitation. Gyarados did not hesitate at all, and immediately used his huge body to block John without hesitation. Then, the electric current shot by Aaron hit Gyarados. With the blessing of rainy days, the power of the electric current became even stronger. Gyarados was originally a Pokémon of the water and flying types, and it had no way to resist the electric attacks. John looked at Gyarados and roared in pain, and hurriedly shouted, Stop it! He looked at the Wolfhound again, and the Wolfhound ran quickly, trying to take Aaron's gun away. Aaron's eyes flashed with a hint of viciousness, and he took out a gun from nowhere, aimed at the big Wolfhound that was about to jump, and fired a net-like capture net without hesitation. The net quickly covered the big Wolfhound and trapped it tightly. This is a special net, extremely tough. The big Wolfhound struggled desperately in the net, and even used the fire tooth to try to bite off the bondage, but the net did not move at all, as if it was an inescapable shackle, ruthlessly trapping the big Wolfhound. Ha ha ha! Aaron's eyes were full of pride and madness, as if everything was under his control. Rumble! Just then, there was a slight movement in the distance. The movement was very weak at first, but it became bigger and bigger in an instant, and even the ground began to shake slightly. Aaron was the first to notice the abnormality, and his eyes were fixed on the direction of the cave. I saw Kokodorus slowly walking out of the cave. They walked in neat steps, and the metal armor on their bodies flashed a cold and hard luster under the weak light. And behind them, a real behemoth appeared. John, who was far away, was also attracted by the increasingly strong sound. When the little Pokémon fully appeared, Aaron's pupils suddenly shrank, and his eyes were full of shock and fear. Oh no, it's Boscodora! Is that the lord of this area, Boscodora, mentioned by those trainers? John muttered to himself, and then looked at the Gyarados beside him. At this time, Aaron's attention was completely attracted by Boscodora, and the current on Gyarados had gradually disappeared. Such a body size, at least 3 meters. John couldn't help but exclaim, his eyes were full of shock. Boscodora opened his huge mouth, and his angry roar was like thunder, continuously echoing in the area. Even though John covered his ears tightly, he could still feel affected by the violent vibration that was like substance. As expected of a Pokémon that can become a lord, such strength is probably at least at the level of a king. John frowned, and a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. This Pokémon hunter may have done something unforgivable to its tribe before, so Boscodora was so angry. This may be a great opportunity for John. The roar of Boscodora alone has completely made Aaron lose the desire to fight. Looking at Boscodora's huge body, it is probably not something that ordinary weapons and Pokémon can compete with. Such a Pokémon must have come from a huge group, or perhaps in a region, and has experienced many cruel competitions. Under the natural law of survival of the fittest, it finally stood out. Whether it is its own strength or other aspects, it is extremely outstanding and perfect. Since the establishment of the Pokémon League, the most troublesome thing is this kind of extremely powerful Pokémon. Ordinary trainers simply cannot resist them. Every year when the Hone region was just being vigorously developed, they encountered strong resistance from these Pokémon. This caused a lot of damage to the construction at that time. Later, the Hone Alliance urgently summoned many elite trainers and used advanced scientific and technological means to finally complete the construction. However, today, the cities and towns where humans mainly live have become saturated, and the development of the wild is no longer as highly valued as in the past. Many former Lord Pokémon have also been defeated, conquered, or forced to leave their homeland by the trainers of the Alliance. The Pokémon that still survive in the wild and have strong strength have become quite rare. I'm getting off topic. Aaron certainly knows that Boscodora is the undisputed overlord of this area. With his current strength and means, there is no way to stop Boscodora's anger. How could John let him escape easily? Gyarados has completely broken free from the electric shock and regained his vitality. John quickly commanded Gyarados to block Aaron's way. Chapter 31. Boy, get out of my way! Aaron shouted at John hurriedly, and John quickly ran over to rescue the wolfhound from the capture net, but his expression was very solemn. I don't know if the extremely angry Boscodora will spread his anger to me. After a while, Boscodora came with a group of Cocodoras and Codoras, and surrounded Aaron in an instant. The group of Cocodoras kept shouting in front of Boscodora, and the sound came one after another. There were even a few who stretched out their short arms and pointed at Aaron angrily, as if telling their lord about Aaron's crimes. Aaron's face was pale, and he hurriedly took out the Pokémon ball, ready to release the toucan, trying to escape from the air. Boscodora raised his head and roared, and a dazzling rainbow cannon was instantly fired, and the powerful energy fluctuations made the air tremble. Aaron's face suddenly changed, and he quickly dodged to the side in embarrassment. Then, with a ferocious look on his face, he picked up the gun and swept around wildly. Big Wolfhound, bite and attack! John gave the order without hesitation. The big wolfhound bared its teeth, with a fierce light flashing in its eyes. It passed through the Cocodoras like a grey lightning and quickly bit Aaron's arm. Ah! Aaron screamed in pain, and big beads of cold sweat kept rolling down his forehead. At this time, his surroundings were already shrouded by the shadow cast by the huge body of Boscodora. He opened his eyes with difficulty, and saw that the huge Boscodora had quietly walked in front of him at some point. The heavy footsteps seemed to be a countdown to death, and every step made Aaron's heart beat rapidly. Seeing this, the big wolfhound decisively let go of his mouth, quickly retreated, and gave his position to Boscodora. Hey, kid, save me, I have a lot of money, I can give you my Pokémon. Aaron shouted at the top of his lungs, constantly moving back desperately, looking at John from time to time, his eyes full of desperate begging. Until his back hit the hard stone wall heavily and he could no longer move, he closed his eyes in despair, his body trembling uncontrollably. After Boscodora solved Aaron, its angry expression gradually eased from ferocious, and its violent breath gradually dissipated, and finally returned to its normal appearance. Then, it turned its head to look at the Gyarados next to John, its eyes full of vigilance. Boscodora, I have no ill will towards you. John looked nervous and said hurriedly. He knew that any inappropriate action at this time might trigger Boscodora's attack again. Fortunately, Boscodora saw everything he did. After a moment of silence, Boscodora nodded at him, then turned around, took steady steps, and slowly returned to the cave with the little guys. John quietly watched Boscodora and the others gradually receding backs, slowly let out a long sigh, and his tense nerves finally relaxed. "Let's go, friends, let's go see our spoils," John said, while waving to the wolfhound and Gyarados. John walked over and looked at the incomplete errand in front of him. He tried to suppress his discomfort and quickly searched out all the valuable things on Aaron. Then, John took the wolfhound and Gyarados and found a big pit not far away. He put Aaron's body into the pit, and Gyarados used his tail to push the surrounding soil into the pit bit by bit to bury Aaron. Until the big hole was filled, John stepped on it to make the land more compact. Haha! John couldn't help laughing, and secretly sighed in his heart that other people's adventures were all full of opportunities and good luck. But he was constantly picking up leaks and even plundering the enemy's legacy. Aaron didn't have much money, and he only had 3 Pokeballs. However, unlike the 2 members of the previous Magma team, Aaron's Pokémon was obviously cultivated. John remembered that if nothing unexpected happened, Shakira's should have reached the critical point of evolution. Now that their owners are no longer alive, these Pokémon are already ownerless. As long as their Pokeballs are destroyed, it is reasonable to declare them wild Pokémon. However, at this stage, they are still enemies, and John doesn't know whether the death of their owners will cause strong stimulation to them. However, after repeated attempts after hesitating, John had just made up his mind to open Shakira's Pokeball. Just as he was about to take action, John suddenly heard a very faint sound coming from the cave. His heart tightened, thinking that something unexpected had happened again. However, a Cocodora ran out of the cave immediately afterwards, looking at John timidly, with helplessness in its eyes. "What's wrong, little guy?" John put the things into his backpack first, then walked forward and asked softly. He took out the specially prepared Pokémon food from his backpack and carefully placed it next to Cocodora's mouth. As soon as Cocodora smelled the special fragrance, it quickly ate the food, then bit John's trouser leg and pulled him into the cave with force. It seemed that something unusual had happened in the cave, and John was a little hesitant. Finally, with the unremitting efforts of Cocodora, John finally stepped into the cave again. However, this time he took the road that John had ruled out before. Under the light of the flashlight, John unexpectedly found several valuable ores. But he did not stop at this moment. His mind was still on figuring out what happened in the cave. After walking a few hundred meters, he came to a fork in the road. It seemed that the interior of the cave was connected in all directions. It was not surprising to think about it carefully. The Pokémon living in the cave were almost all ground type or rock type. When they had nothing to do, they would dig holes in their spare time, and naturally they would have another way. Then, a series of downhill sections appeared in front of him. John walked carefully, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It turns out that the space here is so wide. After going down to the first floor, the space suddenly became open, and John suddenly realized it. No wonder I didn't encounter any Pokémon when I came in alone. It turned out that I was still wandering at other people's doorsteps and the real paradise was still deep inside. Chapter 32. The huge figure of Boscodora instantly caught John's eyes. John looked closely and saw more than a dozen Cocodoras rolling around in pain, groaning constantly. Their metal bodies were covered with many shocking scars, which made people feel pity. It was burns. It turned out that Aaron was really catching Cocodoras. These serious burns must have been caused by Houndoom's jet of flames. Boscodora heard the movement here and slowly turned around. Cocodora under John's feet kept explaining to it eagerly. "Do you need my help, Boscodora?" John asked tentatively. Boscodora was slightly stunned, hesitated for a long time, and finally nodded slowly. John immediately walked over in 2 steps and confirmed it again carefully. The temperature on the surface of each Cocodora was frighteningly high. There was no doubt that they were indeed burned. He immediately took out the burn spray he had bought in Kana's city from his backpack and quickly began to treat them. However, the burn spray could only temporarily suppress the injury. If they wanted to recover completely, they would need a burn reliever. Fortunately, the method of making the most basic medicine, the burn reliever, was not a secret. You could find it by logging on to the official website of the Pokémon Center. However, the most critical thing at the moment was the raw materials needed to make the burn reliever. "Boscodora, can you help me find these berries?" John said, turning the laptop over and showing it the pictures of the berries he needed. Boscodora and a group of uninjured Cocodoras immediately swarmed over. After confirming, Boscodora roared in a low voice and gave an order. Then the Cocodora strode out, probably to the forest to look for berries. "Cocodora, please take me out." If you find the fruit, take it directly outside the cave. You can take me in after I make the anti-burning agent. Cocodora, who had just brought John in, nodded obediently, and then called to Boscodora. After getting the response, he took the lead in taking small steps towards the exit. John nodded to Boscodora and followed Cocodora closely. John returned to the outside of the cave, and then he quickly set up the tent on the flat ground. He looked at the time and it was already very late, but the big wolfhounds were hungry. He sat outside the tent, while grilling, he fell into deep thought, and finally decided not to report the matter. Otherwise, judging from his experience, he believed that everything he got would probably have to be handed over. He was not that stupid. As for the 3 Pokémon left, they were all elite level. If they were sold on the black market, Shakira's alone could be sold at a sky-high price. However, he dismissed the idea as soon as it came up. This won't work. If he does, he probably won't be able to get rid of the shadow of the black market for the rest of his life. He did this before because the Pokémon of the Magma team were really not that good, and secondly, because he was short of money. Although you can travel without money, you can't cultivate Pokémon well. Now there is a shortcut in front of him. Houndoom and Toucans can be kept as backup, and Shakira's will definitely become the main member of his team after evolution. In this way, the chance of winning in the Feng Yuan League conference will definitely increase a lot. After eating and drinking, there was no talk all night. When the first ray of sunlight in the morning sprinkled on the ground, John slowly opened his eyes. He quickly got up, prepared 6 servings of food in one breath, and then released 3 of Aaron's Pokémon from the Pokeball. What surprised John was that after the 3 Pokémon came out, they did not attack as he expected. Instead, they looked at John with curiosity, and the Pokémon food in his hand that exuded an alluring aroma. John secretly guessed that they might also be Pokémon that were illegally captured, and they never really recognized Aaron as a trainer. The weapons found on Aaron might mean that they were often abused by Aaron. I know that you may not have been subdued by the previous trainer in a legitimate way, but Aaron is dead, and you now have 2 choices. Either, challenge the alliance with me and become stronger together. Or, I will give you a new master. John stared at them closely. Shakira's, your potential is very strong, even stronger than the Boscodora inside. But if there is no strong and suitable trainer to cooperate with you, you grow and progress together, but maybe you will never reach your ideal height. John said as he began to seduce them, and then he walked over slowly and steadily with the Pokémon food. Gyarados and Wolfhound stared at the 3 of them intently, and as long as there was a sign of danger, they would be the first to attack without hesitation. Herod and Toucan, think back to your previous life, did you really like it? How did Aaron, the trainer, treat you? I believe you all know it clearly in your hearts. John gently placed 3 portions of Pokémon food in front of them, and then sat down calmly. If you are willing to grow with me, eat the food, and then I will give you a simple treatment. If you don't agree, you won't give me food? The 3 Pokémon looked at each other with speechless expressions on their faces, looking at John helplessly. However, when their eyes were focused on the Pokémon food that they rarely had the chance to touch, their appetite finally overcame their hesitation, and they couldn't help but start to act. John didn't subdue them immediately. Although the intimacy between them was currently 0, John had defeated them last night. According to the rules, they would not ask to fight John again. Maybe they were really hungry, and the food was quickly swept away. But John knew that he couldn't give too much at one time, and he had to give it slowly and step by step. Okay, I have completely destroyed your previous Pokémon balls, now. After destroying their 3 Pokémon balls, John took out a new Pokémon ball and threw it at them without hesitation. Without any resistance, John subdued the 3 of them at once. John didn't expect that it would be so easy to subdue Pokémon. Now he just happened to have 6 Pokémon. Chapter 33. John picked up the Pokémon ball, and then he released Shakira's and the others again. This time, the way they looked at John had changed significantly. The Pokémon ball has a very special function. As long as the Pokémon is successfully captured, some specific information will be implanted in them, so that they know clearly who is their real trainer. Therefore, many Pokémon are often very fierce in the wild, but after being defeated and captured, they will behave obediently to the trainer when they appear again. However, if it is through exchange or trading on the black market, the situation will be completely different, because the new trainer cannot make them convinced. Unless special means are used, such as using the power of technology, using force to threaten, and abusing, the Pokémon will temporarily compromise. John began to carefully check their injuries one by one. The injuries of Houndoom and Toucan were relatively serious. Fortunately, he had bought a first aid kit before, which was just right for them. The three Pokémon quietly accepted John's treatment, and the strangeness in their eyes gradually melted like ice and snow, replaced by a bit of trust and dependence. This was an unprecedented experience for them. They slowly closed their eyes, immersed themselves in it, and enjoyed this rare tenderness and care. Gyarados, Gyarados, baby dragon, come here, from today on, you are close partners. After John treated their injuries, he smiled and began to let the 6 Pokémon contact each other. It only took one night to transform from former enemies to today's companions. However, since they now belong to the same trainer, there is no grudge between them, and they soon became familiar and warm. Baby Dragon stared at the toucan with his eyes fixed, and it was full of yearning for flying, and it looked at the pair of vigorous and powerful wings with envy. Toucan, please take Baby Dragon flying for a while. Baby Dragon, you can't move around, okay? John said to Baby Dragon softly with a doting look in his eyes. Toucan did not object and nodded slightly. Baby Dragon was so excited that he could not wait to climb onto its back and opened his 2 little hands happily, as if he was imagining the wonderful moment of flying freely in the air. Afterwards, John began to carefully record their detailed data. Pokémon, Houndoom. Attribute, Fire and Evil. Feature, Fire Starter. Level, Elite. Carrying items, Charcoal. Mastered skills, Impact, Stare, Crunch, Spark, Jet Flame, Flame Whirlpool, Big Word Explosion, Roar, Provocation, High-Speed Movement, Shadow Clone, Shadow Ball, Evil Wave, Destruction Death Ray. Pokémon, Shakira's. Attribute, Rock and Ground. Feature, Molting. Level, Elite. Carrying items, None. Mastered skills, Slam, Rocket Headbutt, Self-Sacrifice Attack, Earth Fissure, Earthquake, Digging, Sandstorm, Mud Shot, Sharp Stone Blade, Power Gem, Rock Seal, Quicksand Hell. Pokémon, Toucan. Attributes, General and Flying. Features, Sharp Eyes. Level, Elite. Carrying items, None. Mastered skills, Lightning Flash, Slam, Wing Attack, Crazy Attack, Fierce Wind, Pecking Attack, Swallow Return, Claw Attack, Destruction Death Ray. Harriga is John's first Pokémon to carry props. As for the data of Baby Dragon, he is too lazy to do it for the time being. After all, it now almost only knows basic skills such as Slam and Rocket Headbutt, and has not learned any Dragon attribute skills. John decided that if he didn't encounter an extremely rare Pokémon, he didn't want to conquer new members anymore. At this stage, he has successfully gathered 6 Pokémon. You know, ordinary trainers who have traveled for several years may not have such a strong lineup as John. 5 elite-level Pokémon. When Shakira's evolves into Bangiras, he will have the first gym-level Pokémon. Moreover, when Gyarados fully controls its own energy, it will also be promoted to the gym level. Now, the most important thing is to start thinking about how to effectively train Pokémon. John let them move freely, and he began to plan a detailed training plan with full concentration. First of all, Gyarados. The top priority is to improve Gyarados' skills and moves, especially Dragon skills and Water skills, and it is necessary to add more long-range combat moves to it. Secondly, we need to enhance the ability to resist the electric system this time. In the anime, after Ziokun's Gyarados awakened the blood of the Dragon system, it has developed a near-perfect resistance to electric skills. Finally, we need to work hard to increase its growth limit. John has already had a preliminary idea and plan for the ingredients to be prepared for it in the future. Then there is Baby Dragon. There is no doubt that it is the perfect main force in John's ideal future. The most important thing at this stage is to train its combat skills and gradually guide it to learn Dragon-type tricks. At the same time, it is necessary to equip it with sufficient growth-promoting potions. This kind of potion is expensive, and John is ready to go mining to make money at any time. As for Shakira's, John is still considering it in depth. As a quasi-god in the Chengdu area, Bangiras is indeed powerful, but it also has many weaknesses. For example, attacks with attributes such as water, fairy, steel, grass, insect, ground, and fighting can cause considerable damage to it, especially the fighting system. Moreover, it is very slow and cannot fly. Fortunately, its strength and defense are quite good. Therefore, the first thing to focus on is its ability to resist attacks, and the second is to enrich its long-range and close-range attack methods. As for the Wolfhound, it is the first Pokémon that John has truly captured. If there is sufficient funds, John will consider focusing on training it. Otherwise, it can only learn multifaceted and multi-attribute tricks and serve as a Pokémon teacher in John's team. John can only temporarily train Houndoom and Toucan at present. In the later stage, it can only be arranged to the second or third team, otherwise it can only serve as a security guard in his home. John will definitely go back to Wuda town, after all, that is where he has lived for a full 15 years. He had already asked Kyun-Li about it before. As long as his home meets the conditions for transmitting Pokémon, the Pokémon he captures later can be directly transmitted back home. However, this requires someone to operate at home, and such people are often Pokémon breeders. They don't need to travel often, and many people have Pokémon breeders at home. With them, they can prepare a variety of rich nutrients for Pokémon at any time and take good care of their Pokémon. For them, this job is also a way for them to accumulate qualifications, so the Pokémon Breeder Association has idle employees all year round and can provide breeders of different levels according to customer needs. Chapter 34. Anyway, there is nothing to do now. John began to carefully check many videos of the 4 Heavenly Kings exhibition matches on the internet. The really fierce battle scenes will not be made public. After all, the aspects involved are quite extensive, mainly because they cannot easily expose their own strength. Now there are many evil organizations active in each region, such as the Rocket Team in Kanto and Chengdu, the Magma Team and the Aqua Team in the Hone region, the Galaxy Team in the Sinnoh region, etc. So as Kyun-Li said, the Pokémon battle is more to cultivate the combat awareness and ability of the trainer. In actual battles, it is often a chaotic melee, and no one will stipulate the number of Pokémon and the number of people participating in the battle. The Regional Alliance Conference is to supply fresh and potential blood to the Alliance. People like Xiaozai and Xiaomao are regarded as trainers of the Alliance as soon as they become Pokémon trainers. In John's case, it is not considered. Only when he has achieved excellent rankings in the conference will someone approach him actively. However, the most humane point of the Pokémon League is that it will not force trainers to join. If you don't join, it's okay. As long as you are labeled as an alliance, you will be forcibly summoned at certain times, such as when an evil organization invades a city or a major accident occurs in a certain area. Generally speaking, no newbies or ordinary trainers will be summoned to participate in a particularly large battle. Such trainers will only become a burden no matter how many there are. After John recorded many of the 4 kings' common tricks and training methods, the group of Cocodoras began to come with a bunch of tree fruits. For a while, the front of John's tent was full of trees, and some of the tree fruits were missing a hole. I don't know which greedy guy stole a bite. John put on a stern face and collected the tree fruits, and then took some useless blackberries and cut them into small pieces to reward the Cocodoras. A lot of berries were really found, which is the most useful fruit for healing burns. He immediately saved the notes he had just taken, then opened the official website of the Pokémon Center, watched the video shot by Miss Joy, and started to make a burn-removing agent. Although it is okay to eat berries directly, it will be more effective to make them into a deburning agent, and after adding the tree fruit that restores physical strength, it will recover health faster. In order to gain the friendship of Boscodora, John does not want to miss this great opportunity. He has never thought about conquering Boscodora, and he knows that he does not have the strength to do so. However, by becoming friends with them, he will not be blocked by them when exploring the cave in the future, and they can even help find some ores that they do not need. After losing their jobs, the group of Cocodoras began to look for John's Pokémon to play. Gyarados really couldn't stand such a noisy place, so after training, he returned to the Pokémon Ball on his own. The Wolfhound and Houndoom wandered back and forth nearby, and from time to time they competed in speed, neither of them giving in. The Toucan carried the baby dragon that refused to get off on its back, and continued to soar in the air. Shakira's was surrounded by Cocodoras. As ground-type Pokémon, they were relatively close to each other. The anti-burning agent had been prepared. John stretched his body, picked up the extra orange fruit on the side, and distributed it to them one by one. After eating this orange fruit, it can effectively restore physical strength, which can be regarded as a relatively valuable thing. After collecting the Pokémon, John took the prepared anti-burning agent and entered the cave again. With the experience of the previous walk, looking at this dark road, this time he was not so nervous. After the effect of the spray given to them yesterday wore off, the group of injured Kokodoras struggled on the ground in pain again. In the wild, if you don't carry an emergency kit, it can be fatal if something goes wrong. Every year, there are many Pokémon and trainers who die because of this kind of thing. And it is not uncommon for Kokodoras to kill Aaron. Many trainers rashly enter the territory of Pokémon and start fighting to capture them. But in the eyes of Pokémon, no matter what they do in their territory, these trainers are labeled as invaders. If nothing happens, they rarely attack humans. So, this is the true portrayal of the Pokémon world. There are not so many Pokémon that are close to humans, and some are just like grass-type creatures are just not good at fighting. John's emergency kit actually has a burn-reducing agent, but the amount is not enough. Instead of rescuing some of them first, it is better to wait until all of them are rescued together. After a while, Kokodora finally calmed down, and its body temperature began to slowly drop. Not only did Boscodora breathe a sigh of relief, but John was also relieved. And the fact is just as he thought, Boscodora imitated humans and lowered its head slightly, and the action was full of sincere gratitude. John cast a longing look at Boscodora, and just as he was about to speak, Boscodora raised its head and looked at him intently. Then, a group of Kokodora happily surrounded John, jumping and turning in circles. Although it is presumptuous, but I don't want your thanks. John was inevitably nervous in the face of this powerful Pokémon. The main reason was that he didn't know much about the survival rules of wild Pokémon. The place where he was standing at the moment was undoubtedly the territory of Boscodora. He wanted to practice here for a while, mainly to find precious minerals. However, he didn't know whether his request would touch Boscodora's bottom line. Boscodora's big eyes stared at him curiously, and John felt his heartbeat getting faster and faster. But with these Kokodora backing up beside him, he still said with a stiff face, "I want to practice here for a while, I wonder if it's convenient." As soon as the voice fell, Boscodora nodded and then stretched out a strong and powerful hand like a human. John was stunned at first, then stretched out his hand and shook it tightly, with a bright smile on his face. Unlocked achievement, get the friendship of the king level Boscodora. John muttered silently in his heart, full of joy and pride. Chapter 35. After obtaining Boscodora's consent, John returned to the ground and felt much more relaxed. He began to plan today's plan, which was to build a camp for himself and his Pokémon. He was not just for a comfortable outdoor life. You know, as a trainer, if you want to establish a closer relationship with your Pokémon, you can't always keep them in the Pokémon ball. Imagine that the Pokémons are trapped in that small space for a long time, unable to fully feel the breath of nature, unable to stretch their bodies freely. How can they cultivate sincere emotions with the trainers? Only by living together every day, welcoming the first ray of sunshine in the morning together, and appreciating the bright starry sky at night together. Training together, constantly improving each other's strength and tacit understanding in sweat and hard work. Facing challenges together, overcoming difficulties together, and becoming stronger together. In daily life, trainers can observe the joys and sorrows of Pokémon in detail and understand their habits and preferences. During training, you can find the progress and shortcomings of Pokémon in time and give appropriate guidance and encouragement. When facing a strong enemy, you can fight side by side with Pokémon, trust each other, and support each other. Only in this way can you forge an indestructible bond. There are 4 key elements in surviving in the wild: water, fire, shelter, and food. These 4 elements are indispensable, and the lack of any link may lead to huge challenges in survival. For Pokémon, only Gyarados needs a pond to live in. As for food, it is not lacking in this almost uninhabited wilderness. Various tree fruits, wild vegetables, and mushrooms can be seen everywhere. Moreover, Pokémon can also capture some small wild animals, wild Pokémon, as a source of food. Although this is a wasteland, as long as you can find the way Aaron came and find his car, are you afraid of being far away from the forest? Even if the road is rugged, with transportation, it can greatly save time and energy. Fortunately, the cars in this world are not much different from the ones John knew in his previous life. Whether it is the control system or the power principle, there are similarities. For John, an old driver who has had a driver's license for several years, this should not be a big problem. He thought confidently, as if he had seen the scene of himself driving a car freely on this land. So at the moment, there is only one problem in front of him, that is, the problem of shelter. Although John has a tent, if he wants to live for a long time, he still longs for a normal house and a comfortable big bed. Every time he rests in the tent, he feels that the space is small, it is inconvenient to turn over, and the ground is hard and uneven. He fantasizes about having a warm room in the future, with soft furniture and warm sunlight through the windows. He already had a clear idea of the construction of the shelter. He planned to build a frame with thick wood, and then use thick wooden boards for walls and roofs, and leave space for windows and doors. With the help of Pokémon, it is not difficult to get as much wood as you want. For example, the powerful Gyarados can easily carry heavy wood, the digging-skilled Shakiras can also play an important role in preparing the foundation. It is still afternoon now. John looked up at the sky, and there were a few white clouds floating in the blue sky, like cotton candy. He estimated that there should be about 4 hours before dark. Time is tight, and we must act quickly. But today we can only collect a wave of wood first, and we still have to spend the night in the tent. To be honest, if you don't bring a cushion, it is really not recommended to live in a tent. The ground is all yellow soil, without grass cushions, and it feels much more uncomfortable to sleep than sleeping on a stiff wooden board, making people uncomfortable all over. Yesterday, John fell asleep in the tent, sleeping on the only cushion, and felt like he was sleeping on a stone. When he woke up the next day, he felt a little backache. With the help of Houndoom, John found the car in a short time. By dark, he had returned with a full car of supplies and wood. Then, John cleverly lured Cocodora and the others out of the cave with food. After a hearty meal, they worked together to dig a big pit next to the camp at John's earnest request. The pit was about 20 meters in diameter. The depth is 4 meters. Gyarados then used the water cannon skill towards the pit, and in a short while, the pit was filled with clear water. John hurriedly made a comfortable big bed and then laid a thin cushion on it. He looked up at the bright starry sky, and thought it would not rain at night. So John lay comfortably on the bed and enjoyed the charming night view with his friends. There is almost no danger in this area. The biggest source of danger is Boscodora, and now that they have become friends with it, no wild Pokémon will dare to act recklessly within its territory. Ding ding ding! John picked up the communicator. This was the first time someone contacted him in such a long time. Mexi Mexi! Good evening, John, you should have arrived at the Wasteland Canyon. Xia Sheng's energetic voice came from the other end of the communicator. Xiao Sheng? How do you have my communication method? I have been here for 2 days. John asked with a puzzled look on his face. He turned his head and looked around, and found that the Pokémon were all staring at him intently. He smiled gently, and Baby Dragon ran happily into his arms. Did Dad ask Miss Joy in Wuda Town, and what Pokémon's voice is this? Baby Dragon's cheerful cry was heard by Xiao Sheng keenly, and he asked excitedly. Remember the Pokémon egg I got before? It hatched, it's Baby Dragon. John's face was full of smugness, and he showed off to Xiao Sheng. Xiao Sheng responded to him loudly, Baby Dragon. Xiao Sheng, what Baby Dragon? Xiao Ao's curious voice came from the communicator, and Xiao Sheng immediately explained excitedly, Sister, John has captured Baby Dragon. Not captured, but hatched. John explained, but Xiao Sheng was still talking to Xiao Ao about the knowledge of Pokémon types. Chapter 36. The call continued, and then the communicator seemed to be taken away by Qunli. John, congratulations! Qunli's words with a hearty laugh came over, have you captured the mandible ant? Mr. Qunli, good evening. John replied, I haven't found the mandible ant yet, but with Baby Dragon, I don't think I need to capture the mandible ant anymore. You are right. It takes much more energy and resources to cultivate dragon-type Pokémon than other types of Pokémon. I know, thank you Mr. Qunli. Also, you now have the conditions to be an elite trainer. In the nearest Yamanashi town. I understand, I'll go there in the next 2 days. Qunli said with relief, and then interrupted the communication after confirming John's safety. He would never reveal the secrets of Pokémon hunters. As for the origins of Shakiras, John would also make a reasonable explanation. After all, this is the wild, and there is really nothing that is absolutely impossible. Putting the communicator aside, John gently covered the baby dragon with a blanket. Accompanied by the moonlight, he slowly fell into a sweet dream. No words were spoken all night. Shakiras, fix the wooden stakes, Gyarados, use the power of your tail to slap down. After a morning of hard work, the prototype of the house was finally built. However, due to the lack of construction tools, John could only come up with a clever way to let Shakira's dig a small hole first, and then let the toucan lift the wood with its claws, and then Gyarados fixed it with force. This was repeated for more than 2 hours, and the toucan was already exhausted and panting, and fell asleep directly on the ground. John seemed quite leisurely, without any great effort, just sitting aside, drinking hot tea leisurely, and directing them to work in an orderly manner. The task in the afternoon was to cap the house. The wolfhound and hound made full use of their sharp claws to cut the wood. The toucan grabbed John's back and brought him to the right position. After John fixed the groove position, the last critical step was completed by the collision of the baby dragon. The small house with only one floor, 8 meters long, 5 meters wide and 3 meters high was successfully built. Looking at the first house that belonged to him completely, John felt a sense of belonging to this world for the first time in his heart. Although this was just a temporary residence, he would live here for a long time. Besides, who can say that he would never come back in the future? John immediately moved the kitchen utensils in, and wrote down the drawings carefully, preparing to make simple furniture. Fortunately, the management of vehicles in this world is not very strict. John did not have a driver's license, and his vehicle was not registered, but no one would investigate the origin of his car. Tomorrow, he planned to drive to the nearest town, Yamanashi Town. There are complete facilities there, including the Pokémon Center, the training center for trainer-level certification, and the mall. Since Kyun-Lee said so, he will take the trainer-level test, and he plans to buy some windows and food there. John now has several precious ores in his hands, and he can return to the town to exchange them for urgently needed supplies. At the same time, the training plan for Gyarados and others will also be prepared in full swing. Extra meal tonight. John made up his mind that since he was going to take the elite trainer test tomorrow, he would replenish supplies by the way, and now he could reward everyone well. Moreover, the trainer level test must go through a 2-on-2 Pokémon battle. Only by replenishing physical strength can you be in the best condition to welcome more exciting and challenging battles. You know, after becoming an elite Pokémon trainer, you can enjoy the subsidy provided by the Alliance every month, although it is not much, only 30,000. But as the trainer level continues to rise, the funds that can be obtained later will become more and more abundant. I heard that the top-level Pokémon trainers don't need to do anything and can easily get millions of dollars every month. This astonishing treatment makes countless trainers yearn for it. Of course, this also means that after taking the money, you can't just sit there and watch when the league comes to you for something. As the plates of carefully prepared Pokémon food were brought out, every Pokémon was excited and couldn't wait to start enjoying it. Fortunately, the previous superior gave the backpack he prepared was big enough to hold a lot of things, so John prepared a lot of food. The next morning, just as the sky was turning pale, John drove off in high spirits. The distance was not particularly far, but the road conditions were not very good. There was no flat and wide official road in this area, so he could only move slowly along the winding path. Along the way, the car was bumpy and shaking, raising clouds of dust. After about 2.5 hours of difficult journey, John finally stopped the car slowly at the Pokémon Center. He paid the league fee, and now with the support of the league, he no longer needed to spend a lot of money to treat Pokémon. After checking the 5 Pokémon, John enjoyed a hearty lunch at the Pokémon Center and then went to the trainer-level certification agency. Compared with the bustling and lively Pokémon Center, this place seemed particularly deserted. However, in the registration hall, many people can still be seen queuing up to fill in information. Most of them are people who have just advanced from novice trainers and are working hard to obtain the qualifications of ordinary trainers. John went straight to the front desk of elite trainers, but there were few people here. It's not that there are few elite trainers, but 2/3 of the participants in the league conference are elite trainers. The home league conference was originally 1 month earlier than the silver conference. Now there is less than a month before the conference, and everyone is adjusting their mentality or stepping up training. They completed the assessment early, so now is almost the time when there are the fewest people. John came to the front desk, and one of the girls with ponytails was already a little drowsy. John found her, walked up to her, and said, "Hello, I'm here to certify the level of elite trainers." "Okay." The ponytail girl raised her head suddenly, saw John's mature and handsome face, and instantly focused. "Hello, trainer, please show me your ID." After that, she quickly found a few documents that needed to be filled out and handed them to John, who happened to take out his ID. "Ah, are you still a novice trainer?" The ponytail girl looked at John in surprise, and John touched his head a little embarrassedly, I have just become a real trainer not long ago. Chapter 37. John's information soon appeared on the Ponytail Girl's computer screen. Name, John. Gender, male. Place of birth, welfare home in Wudu Town, Wudu Island. Age, 15 years old. I have just become a real trainer not long ago. John asked with some embarrassment, is this considered a violation of the rules? There is no rule, but this situation is relatively rare. The Ponytail Girl also smiled slightly. This was the first trainer she had handled who skipped levels to get certified. Please fill in the information. The first information John took was about the captured Pokémon and the time of capture. Fill in up to 6. He picked up the pen and filled it in immediately without hesitation. There was nothing to hide. Anyway, when he was treated at the Pokémon Center before, the Alliance's backstage already had his Pokémon-related data. After filling it out, John returned the information neatly to the Ponytail Girl. Please wait in the rest area. The next written test will start soon. She still maintained a polite smile and said, John nodded, then walked briskly to the rest area and waited quietly. The trainer level assessment is mainly divided into two important parts, written test and actual combat. In terms of the written test, almost most people can pass. However, the actual combat link is not necessarily. Even if you have 2 elite Pokémon, if your command ability is poor, you will still be judged as a certification failure. Because the focus of the assessment is basically on the trainer's own ability, even if you lose the Pokémon battle, as long as your command ability can be recognized by the examiner, you can also pass smoothly. The examination room for the written test is very spacious, but only 5 trainers entered at this moment. After the examiner put down the test paper, he sat leisurely on the chair, and then leaned against the wall and soon fell asleep. John did not pay any attention to them, but concentrated on reading the questions carefully, and the corners of his mouth twitched unconsciously. Question 1. Which of the following options is the evolution of Flintstones? A. Flame Chicken, B. Molters, C. Strong Chicken, D. Proud Pheasant. Which good guy came up with this question? To test the trainers of the home league, they actually used their own 3 starter Pokémon as the test questions. John wrote down option C without hesitation. However, the next 2 big questions were quite high level. Anyone who was a little absent-minded in class would think that there was something wrong with the test paper, not their own knowledge. How many evolutionary branches are there for Balin, and under what conditions can the evolution be completed? Answer: Shavarang, Abirange, and Coplan. When cultivating Balin, if you focus on strength training, it will evolve into Shavarang. If you focus on defense, it will evolve into Abirange. If you practice dual cultivation, it will evolve into Coplan. The next question asked: what is the evolutionary form of Doi Ninja? What are their attributes? Why did such an evolution happen? Tell us what you think. John wrote down decisively: Iron Ninja, Bug and Flying, Shelled Ninja, Bug and Ghost. As for why it evolved like this, I don't know either. We can only rely on the Pokémon researchers to work hard and strive to break through this mysterious puzzle as soon as possible. There are still many questions to come, such as the evolution of Eevee, the evolution of Snowboy, the attribute restraint of Pokémon, etc. As a senior Pokémon fan, John answered these questions fluently, and almost wrote down the correct answers without thinking. So he finished it in less than half an hour. He looked up at the trainers who were still writing furiously. Under everyone's various expressions, he stood up and handed in the paper. The examiner originally thought that he had given up on himself. After all, today's test questions were indeed quite at the cultural level of trainers. However, when the examiner picked up the test paper, he immediately looked at him with admiration. Hidden talents, it turns out that this is a top student. Exams are like this: even if John is the first to hand in his paper, he still has to wait patiently for an hour and a half before handing it in to the examiner for grading. John was full of confidence and returned to the rest area, waiting for the start of the practical test. Only trainers who have reached 80 points in the written test are eligible to enter the next round. John took advantage of this gap and fell asleep peacefully. John, wake up! John rubbed his eyes, and then yawned loudly. Unconsciously, he had slept for an hour and a half, and his neck was a little sore. Congratulations, you passed the written test, and now there is an examiner waiting for you in the number 1 battle area. The Ponytail Girl gently shook John's shoulder and said softly. Okay. Thank you. John stood up and stretched his waist. He didn't pay special attention to her name. After all, it was almost just a one-time encounter. However, he still showed his polite side. The ponytail girl was also conscientious and knew to pay attention to John, otherwise he was really afraid that he would oversleep. You are really amazing. I heard from the examiner that you only lost points on the question about the Doi Ninja. I believe that even if Professor Oak came, he would not be able to explain it very clearly. John said helplessly. What is the purpose of releasing such a question that even the authoritative doctor of Pokémon has not yet studied? But thank you anyway. Can you please take me to the battlefield? John looked up at the signs around him and found that there was no clear indication of the battlefield. He touched his head and said to the ponytail girl embarrassedly. Okay, I'll take you there right away. The ponytail girl smiled and nodded, took John's arm, and walked quickly to the number 1 battle area. This is an open-air battlefield. The area is not very large, but fortunately there is no restriction on the use of any Pokémon. The examiner had already stood on the battle stage, quietly waiting for John's arrival. Seeing John coming, he nodded with a serious expression, as a greeting. John did not neglect it, and immediately stood opposite him quickly. The two did not communicate too much, and the rules of the game had been clearly stated by the referee. Now, let's start the Elite Trainer assessment of Trainer John. Both sides of this battle use 2 Pokémon, and the challenger will attack first. Chapter 38. As soon as the referee finished speaking, John's fingers slowly swept across his 6 Pokeballs. Finally, his fingertips stopped on one of them, and then he reached out and took it out and threw it out with force. Go, Shakira's! The examiner on the opposite side saw Shakira's appearing in front of John, his pupils instantly dilated, his eyes were full of surprise, and he nodded constantly. Then, my Pokémon is it? The examiner said, and also threw his Pokeball. Moo! In front of him, a creature with a body tightly surrounded by steel armor, a thick horn on the nose, and an arc-shaped shell on the back appeared. It turned out to be the Iron Rhino, which, like Shakira's, is also a Pokémon with rock and ground attributes. As a Pokémon that has not evolved yet, the Iron Rhino looks very majestic from the outside, but in fact its internal strength is relatively weak. Its main habitat is in the Kanto region, but it is relatively rare in the Hone region. The weaknesses of both sides are the same, but the examiner released the armored rhino. Does this mean he looks down on him? Come on, young man, you attack first. The examiner crossed his arms and was full of confidence. At this time, the look he gave John had changed from indifference to attention. John narrowed his eyes slightly, and then gave a loud order. Shakira's, use Quicksand Hell. Shakira's responded without hesitation, and the ground around the armored rhino changed instantly, turning into quicksand, quickly forming a tight encirclement, trapping it firmly. The examiner was still calm and shouted calmly. Iron Armored Rhino, rush out quickly, and then use horn ramming. The armored rhino, with its incomparable strength, struggled to break free from the shackles of the quicksand, and rushed towards Shakira's like a chariot, with great momentum. John's expression did not change at all, and he said calmly. Shakira's, dodge and use rock blockade. Shakira's reacted extremely quickly, and flexibly dodged to the side. Then, a huge rock rose from the ground beside him, like an indestructible wall, blocking the attack route of the armored rhino. Not bad, young man. The examiner couldn't help but praise, but his eyes were always locked on the battlefield, and then he quickly ordered. Iron Armored Rhino, break through with a ram. The armored rhino raised its thick forelimbs, exerted force suddenly, and the muscles of its whole body were tense. It instantly smashed the rock in front of it and continued to rush towards Shakira's desperately. Shakira's, gem power! John shouted again. Shakira's forehead sprayed out a dazzling light like a gem, and hit the armored rhino with a thunderous force. Iron Rhino, use digging! The examiner responded hurriedly. It was impossible to dodge at this time, as the Iron Rhino was too bulky. Although the damage of rock-type skills was relatively low, the power of gems was very powerful. Once knocked down, the opponent's next wave of attacks would surely follow. As a ground-type Pokémon, digging holes has always been the strength of the Iron Rhino, but John has been waiting for this moment. Use Earthquake! John shouted without hesitation. Nanny! The examiner was surprised. The best skill to deal with Pokémon that dig holes is undoubtedly to use Earthquake. After an earthquake, the Pokémon in the ground suffered more serious damage than those on the ground. Shakira's body slammed into the ground, and the energy fluctuations generated by the powerful force caused the entire battlefield to vibrate violently. The Iron Rhino was accurately hit by this force, and its painful howl came from the hole, and then it lost its combat ability in the ground. Shakira's, pull up the armored rhino. John ordered. After Shakira's pulled up the armored rhino, the examiner took it back with an apologetic look on his face. Then he smiled at John and said, I didn't expect Shakira's to learn Earthquake. It seems that it is not far from evolution. Next, I have to be more serious. Come out, Shawarang. This is a Pokémon with a pair of spring legs. As soon as it appeared, it performed a fierce sidekick to Shakira's as a demonstration. Sure enough, this is the finale. John said secretly in his heart. Shawarang is a fighting Pokémon. It is said that the power of its sidekick is enough to kick down a thick tree. Just from its agile posture and sharp eyes, it can be seen that this is a guy who has experienced many battles. However, the Pokémon that can appear in the assessment are all elite-level Pokémon, so John is not too worried about it. Shawarang, use the chain kick. The examiner shouted loudly. He did not forget that it was time to test John's ability. In the last battle, he was not thoughtful enough, which led to the mistake of the armored rhino, but Shawarang was very different. Shawarang quickly started to run up. The venue was not large, and its speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it came to Shakira's. I saw its legs with afterimages, wrapped in the whistling wind, kicking towards Shakira's fiercely. Shakira's, use the sharp stone blade. John quickly gave the order. Shawarang's speed was too fast, and Shakira's could not dodge at all, so he could only choose to defend with attack. After Shakira's endured several fierce attacks from Shawarang, countless sharp stone pieces appeared around it instantly. These stone pieces flew towards Shawarang like bullets with sharp sounds of breaking through the air. Shawarang, get out of the way quickly. The examiner shouted quickly. Shawarang reacted quickly and immediately retracted his legs, followed by a neat side roll, and quickly dodged the attack of the sharp stone blade. The examiner did not dare to let Shawarang exchange injuries for injuries. After all, its defense was not high, and its strength was only its strong attack power. Shakira's, use the self-sacrifice attack. Use the shadow clone technique. Shakira's rushed towards Shawarang quickly, but directly hit Shawarang's clone, and then had to stop. Shawarang first uses the gathering of energy, and then uses the million-ton flying kick. More than a dozen Shavarangs quickly dispersed around Shakira's, and then it stood still, placing its hands firmly on its chest. Under the amplification of chi, the muscles on his right leg bulged obviously, and the veins popped out. Then, with a spring-like force, his legs suddenly jumped up. This kick greatly increased both the speed and the power, as if to completely smash everything in front of it. Chapter 39. Shakira's, use digging to dodge. John made a prompt decision and shouted immediately. The digging skill can not only cause unexpected attacks to the opponent, but also effectively avoid the enemy's fierce offensive. After feeling the powerful force hidden in Shawarang's legs, Shawarang instantly burst out at its fastest speed. Its body rotated at high speed, like an extremely sharp drill. The moment it touched the ground, it raised a rolling dust, and for a while, the dust was flying, blurring people's vision. However, Shakira's was obviously not very good at digging skills. Its speed was far less than that of Digger or Sandshrew, these small Pokémon that are good at digging holes. Shawarang also keenly perceived this. As an experienced and battle-hardened Pokémon that tests the strength of trainers, it has never let up in its career. It also knew that once Shakira's successfully drilled into the ground, it would fall into an extremely passive situation. After all, it can't fly in the air, and can only rely on its feet to stand firmly on the ground. As long as it stands on the ground, it has to be on guard all the time, guarding against Shakira's sudden attack from underground at any time. In the air, Shawarang roared loudly, and for some reason, his speed increased a bit. Although Shakira's had tried his best to dig a hole, at the critical moment when his whole body was about to sink into the ground, he was hit accurately by Shawarang's handsome and swift flying kick. This heavy blow made Shakira's painful. You know, the fighting tricks can cause double damage to it, not to mention that this blow was launched after Shawarang gathered his energy to increase his attack power. Shakira's, use the power of gems. John shouted again. This blow did not completely make Shakira's lose his fighting ability. He saw that it was against Shawarang's feet, and an extremely dazzling light suddenly appeared on his head. The light was dazzling and contained endless power. Shawarang, dodge, use flying knee strike. At this critical moment, after hearing the trainer's command, Shawarang squatted directly without any hesitation or delay, and swiftly dodged the attack of the gem power. Then, it immediately used its knee to hit Shakira's heart again. Shakira's, lose the ability to fight, Shawarang wins. After seeing Shakira's fall to the ground, the referee immediately blew the whistle and announced the result of the game loudly. Thank you for your hard work, Shakira's, you should have a good rest. John took out the Pokémon ball with a look of pity, and then quickly put Shakira's away. In order to accumulate more valuable practical experience for it, and also based on the full recognition of its current strength, John decided to send it to participate in this battle. However, it did not disappoint him. John's team is not the so-called Sandstorm team, so he can only change Shakira's previous fighting style. He had neither other ground-type Pokémon nor Pokémon that could change the weather. And you should know that the continuous damage caused by the Sandstorm will also have an adverse effect on himself. This is not the simple mode of you hit me and I hit you in the game world. Many attacks can be cleverly used for defense. And it can be clearly seen from the somewhat breathless appearance of the Shawarang that it was obviously hit hard against the Shakira's wearing a hard armor. It's like you use the same force to punch a soft cushion in a hard stone surface, and the effect is completely different. Please release the next Pokémon, trainer who is accepting the assessment. The referee's loud voice sounded again, and John took out the Pokeball without hesitation and threw it out. It's your turn, Gyarados. Roar. Gyarados' huge body instantly appeared in the field. It glared fiercely, and Shawarang was actually shocked by this powerful intimidation. Not bad, you also have Gyarados, young man, I admit you, whether you can defeat Shawarang or not, you have passed the assessment. This was originally the examiner's inner monologue, but he couldn't help but say it to John in the end. This is actually part of the assessment for trainers with great potential. If the trainer really believes it and handles the subsequent battles casually, he can also be promoted. However, he will also be labeled as negative, and the league's efforts to attract this part of trainers will be placed at the lowest level. Only those who always actively respond to battles and fully trainers who go all out are what the league needs most. Thank you, but I still firmly believe in the strength of Gyarados. John was stunned for a moment, then looked at Gyarados firmly, and Gyarados responded as if he had a telepathic connection. Use the Destruction Ray. John ordered loudly. The examiner also looked at John with satisfaction, and saw that a golden light quickly condensed in Gyarados' mouth, and the light became more and more dazzling, as if it contained endless power. Shawarang, use high-speed movement, and then use flying kick. Shawarang's body was like lightning, and he dodged quickly and jumped high towards Gyarados' position. Gyarados, block it with the water tail. John was calm and commanded calmly. After hearing the order, Gyarados' tail was instantly covered by the water, and the water surged and swept towards Shawarang in the air. The strength of Shawarang was obviously not as strong as that of Gyarados. After just a brief touch, Shawarang was hit hard by this powerful force. Use Dragon's Fury to aim at Shawarang's landing point. John ordered decisively again, and Gyarados quickly launched Dragon's Fury, and the violent energy roared out. Shawarang, who could not fly, could not choose his landing point on his own, and saw that Dragon's Fury was about to hit him accurately. Shawarang, use Kihiquin to block it. The examiner's voice came quickly, and Shawarang hurriedly used Kihiquin, but he knew in his heart that this could not completely resist the powerful power of Dragon's Fury, but could only slightly offset the damage caused by Dragon's Fury. Bang! Dragon's Fury exploded violently, and the powerful energy completely enveloped Shawarang, and he was hit hard by the aftermath of the explosion again. Gyarados, the final blow, use the water cannon to rush Shawarang out of the battlefield. Gyarados is most proficient in the use of water cannon, it is almost launched instantly, and the powerful water pressure is immediately sprayed out. Chapter 40. Just as Gyarados' water cannon was about to hit Shawarang, the examiner immediately shouted. Shawarang, Shadow Clone. Shawarang's leg was injured, and the examiner also keenly noticed this. Sweep over. John also saw that Shawarang was inconvenient to move, and Gyarados immediately attacked each clone one by one. Cha! Shawarang tried to dodge, but failed after all. He was rushed out by the powerful impact of the water cannon and hit the wall heavily. Shawarang lost his ability to fight, Gyarados won, and this assessment was won by trainer John. The referee blew the whistle and shouted excitedly. Congratulations, John, you passed the assessment. Gyarados and Shakiras are very strong. I believe they will reach the gym level soon. The examiner took back Shawarang, smiled kindly on his face, and said to John. Thank you. John bowed slightly and responded politely. Clap, clap. It turned out that the ponytail lady who had just brought John in had been watching John's battle assessment intently. At this moment, she couldn't wait to step forward quickly, her face full of joy, and enthusiastically congratulated John. John, the record has been saved, your trainer level has been archived, and now you are an elite trainer. Then, she continued. Wait half an hour, we still need to register your card number, and get the elite trainer certificate. Before leaving the trainer level certification agency, he asked about the location of the mall in advance, and then walked out of the door. John looked up at the sky and estimated that after purchasing things, he might only be able to stay in the Pokémon Center for one night today. After all, after the fierce battle, Shakiras and Gyarados really need to recover. He looked down at the watch on his left hand. His ordinary ID had been successfully upgraded. Now, he only needed to scan the watch lightly, and his detailed information would appear clearly. This watch has sufficient power and advanced solar charging function. The most important point is that it also has the function of communication, but it can only receive information within the Alliance. In other words, once the Alliance needs it, it will pass the message to him through this watch. John first prepared to sell all the ore. Fortunately, this town also has a legal ore purchasing office. These places are often affiliated with the Alliance and belong to the Alliance's industry. The purpose of their establishment is to provide generous benefits to the trainers inside. The Alliance has many positions, among which the positions suitable for trainers include forest rangers, patrolmen, police officers, search officers, etc. These positions are often accompanied by various dangers, and the most effective way to solve the dangers is to continuously improve their own strength. Therefore, for those ores that can help Pokémon improve their strength, they are almost always in short supply. After selling 5 pieces of ore, John successfully earned 700,000 yen. With so much money in his heart, John immediately rushed to the mall and started buying the necessary supplies. Pokémon Center. Okay, John, your Shakiras and Gyarados have recovered. After returning to the Pokémon Center, John immediately handed Shakiras and Gyarados to Miss Joy for recovery. As the injury was not serious, Miss Joy smiled and waved to John, calling him over. Also, congratulations on becoming an elite trainer. Thank you, Miss Joy, and can I use the phone in the lobby? After John took back the Pokémon ball, he asked politely. Of course, but there is a time limit each time. Miss Joy's words did not surprise John at all. After all, if there is no time limit, I am afraid that the queue behind will be very long, and it is easy to cause various contradictions and conflicts. He nodded and walked over quickly. At this time, there was still a phone that was not in use. John first scanned the sensing area with his watch, and then a 5-minute call time limit popped up on the screen. He took a deep breath and started dialing the number. This was the first time John had called the welfare home since leaving the fighting island. With the support of the fighting dojo, the welfare home was equipped with a phone that can make video calls a year ago. It's just that there are few opportunities to use it, because many people who leave the welfare home will never go back. To be honest, John has been in the welfare home for a long time. Life in the orphanage is not good, and many of the children there have problems of one kind or another. He had an adult mindset from the beginning, and he could not fit in at all. Those behaviors of stealing and deliberately making trouble for attention, and the well-behaved appearances of everyone when someone came to adopt, really made John dislike them. Moreover, he firmly believed that he would be able to make a difference after leaving the orphanage, so why bother to gamble on whether the adoptive parents who adopted him were kind? Mexi. As soon as the phone was connected, the figure of a middle-aged woman appeared in John's sight. You are John. She stared at John, who was somewhat familiar, and after a little thought, she immediately recognized him. Dean Risa, long time no see, how are you recently? And how is Amy? For this Dean who took good care of him, John couldn't help but smile warmly. You came here specifically to find Amy, didn't you? Dean Risa said unhappily, Amy keeps yelling about looking for you, but she needs another year before she can leave. Amy's family has changed, and she has been silent since she entered the welfare home. Later, because she was bullied by other children, John fought with others for her, and then John had a little follower behind him. The welfare home has clear rules. In order to prevent children who have no ability to survive from starving to death or committing crimes after they come out because they have no skills, they must be over 14 years old before they can leave the welfare home. Moreover, all alliances have clearly stipulated that each place can only recruit people over 14 years old as employees, otherwise they will be severely punished. After John left, the only thing he was worried about was Amy. Before, he would go back to visit from time to time, but during this period, Amy was taking the entrance examination for Pokémon breeders. That's why Qiaoan didn't bother her, and even didn't tell her that he had left Fighting Island, fearing that she would be distracted. He also knew that the assessment was over, so he chose to call back at this time. Chapter 41. Can you call Amy for me? Dean, I have a time limit of 4 minutes and 30 seconds for calls now. John's eyes were fixed on the time in the upper right corner, and his expression seemed quite anxious. Okay. Dean Risa closed her voice and disappeared from the camera. Then there was a loud shout, Amy, John is looking for you. After a while, Amy ran over breathlessly, and when she saw John, she looked resentful. John, you haven't come to see me for a long time. Amy's cheeks were bulging, and her eyes were full of dissatisfaction. What caught John's eyes was a little girl with orange shoulder-length hair. She was wearing a blue and white striped t-shirt and a yellow pleated skirt. She looked very cute. And in her arms, she was holding a cute little Gunny Uniu tightly. This is the Pokémon her parents left for her. Dean Risa agreed to let Amy take care of it after John left because Gunny Uniu is not dangerous. John has always treated Amy as a sister. When he saw her, he showed a guilty and embarrassed look on his face. I have already gone out to travel. Really? Amy did not blame him at all. She had known John's ambition for a long time. For John, she worked hard to learn the knowledge of Pokémon breeders, just to be able to help John in the future. Yes, I will visit you again after I return to Wuda town, but don't worry, I will call you as soon as I have time. John solemnly promised, and then asked with concern. Have you passed the breeder assessment? Of course, I am determined to be a top breeder. Amy also said with confidence, and John was sincerely happy for her. Also, I have passed the elite trainer assessment. Really? Amy covered her mouth in surprise, looked at John in disbelief, and asked eagerly. What Pokémon did you capture? Did Magikarp evolve? I'll let you know when I get back. John didn't waste too much time on this topic, he had other things to tell Amy. The 5-minute call ended quickly, and John touched his stomach, then realized that he hadn't eaten yet. Fortunately, the cafeteria at the Pokémon Center has good service and all food is cooked fresh. The chefs will cook carefully according to the amount you need. Every time, John directly asked for the maximum amount, but they were not surprised by this. After all, each person can carry up to 6 Pokémon, and Pokémon have a larger appetite. After not lying on such a comfortable bed for several days, John let out the Wolfhound, Hound, and Baby Dragon. The Wolfhound and Hound had not trained for a day, so let them enjoy this holiday comfortably today. Baby Dragon found that the space here was not big and there was no way to release its energy. Then it ran into John's arms and tried to find the Pokeball of Toucan on its waist. John pinched its face unhappily and stopped its behavior. Baby Dragon seemed a little frustrated. It just ate and said it didn't want to sleep. John turned on the computer and showed Baby Dragon countless videos of Tyrannosaurus. Baby Dragon finally fell asleep tiredly. It was estimated that in his dream, he had transformed into Tyrannosaurus and soared in the vast sky. It was already past midnight after coaxing Baby Dragon. John did not continue to work and rested at ease. After solving all the problems, the next day, as soon as the sun rose, John drove back to the Wasteland Canyon again. Okay, from today, we will have strict training. John looked at the 5 Pokémon standing side by side in front of him, and the Gyarados in the big puddle. These words instantly aroused their passion, but John let them move freely for a while first. He was going to kick off the training with a rich and nutritious lunch. Even the toucans, hounds and wolfhounds that were not listed as the main team by him, John treated them equally. Although Pokémon will slowly comprehend various moves over time, such a process is really too slow. Moreover, if they do not practice specifically, many Pokémon will find it difficult to break through the gym level until the end of their lives. In the wild, elite Pokémon are already very powerful. After taking a plate of exquisite Pokémon food, John took Shakira's into the cave to look for Boscodora. Just like Qianlias the saying goes, Pokémon are the best teachers for them. As a trainer, John only needs to make the most reasonable judgment in the battle to make the strength of Pokémon perfectly displayed. Boscodora has rich experience and broad knowledge in the fierce fighting of his life. It knows how powerful Shakira's will be after it evolves. It is also hard for it to resist the delicious Pokémon food, so it can only agree to John's request and start one-on-one training with Shakira's inside the cave. Anyway, it has nothing important to do, and now it is still very concerned about guiding the younger generation. However, the group of Cocodora inside the cave has only evolved a few Codoras, and they need to continuously consume minerals to achieve evolution. The same is true for Shakira's, so Boscodora generously took out a few minerals that it may no longer need, as a return gift for John's food. Shakira's looked at John carefully. Those ores were very attractive to it, but it didn't dare to act rashly without John's consent. Eat, Shakira's, you have reached the critical point of evolution now. I hope that when I see you next time, you have completed the evolution. John had only subdued it for a few days, but Shakira's had never met a trainer like John in his experience of being bought and sold. It cherished this hard-earned emotion, so it floated around John happily and laughed happily. After John comforted it, he left the cave, but it called a group of Cocodolas out and brought back a few boxes of Pokémon food from the truck as their snacks. In fact, John did not suffer any loss. Wild Pokémon were simple-minded. John was good to them, and they were trying hard to think about how to repay him. So, after a while, they began to look for some ores they didn't need inside the cave as a thank you gift to John. Chapter 42. In the past few days, the Pokémon have been training hard, and John has not slacked off at all. He devoted himself to the research on the production of energy cubes. Since the secret recipes of energy cubes are usually not public, this undoubtedly adds a lot of difficulty to John's research. Fortunately, with his eloquent tongue, he successfully obtained several recipes from Mitsuko. Although these recipes are the most basic, fortunately they cover water, rock, and evil, but the dragon recipe is too scarce. Of course, it does not mean that you have to let Pokémon eat energy cubes to cultivate them. It's just that energy cubes are easy to carry and help Pokémon enhance the effect of their special moves. However, John is not a professional breeder. The reason why he is so obsessed with making energy cubes is just to save money. After all, the price of the energy cube production machine is relatively cheap, but the price of the finished product is very expensive. The energy cubes made from these recipes in his hand are also the common types on the market. The production of higher-level energy blocks is extremely rare, almost enough for their own Pokémon, so many families have specially formed a Pokémon breeding team. Except for Shakira's, who was carefully taught by Boscodora, John could only conduct targeted training for the remaining 5 Pokémon. First of all, Gyarados, John not only customized various special moves for it, but also added anti-electric shock training. In order to better absorb the dragon attribute energy in its body, John's requirements for it can be said to be the most stringent. Baby Dragon has started the training mode that consumes physical strength. Every day, it keeps climbing up and down, jumping up and falling heavily. Fortunately, its head is extremely hard, and there has never been a problem due to a fall. The Great Wolf Dog and Hound are conducting combat training. Not only should they practice speed and evil special moves, but also focus on physical training. So John would regularly let them pull empty carts, small mine carts, into the cave every day, and then pull them out after filling them with ore. Of course, most of these ores are ordinary stones, but occasionally there are some unique things. The positioning of the toucan is temporary aerial reconnaissance, and it has learned a lot of tricks. Another important aspect is to fly with John. Therefore, flying ability has become the focus of training. John only lets it exercise the strength of its wings and physical strength, starting from carrying the baby dragon on its back and carrying a few pieces of ores on its feet to soar in the air for 1, 2, and 3 circles, and constantly strengthen it in this way. Since the Pokémon have worked so hard, John must not lag behind in the production of energy blocks. For this production, John specially purchased machines and raw materials, and some materials that can be found in the forest were given to the Wolfhound and Hounded to collect. However, if you want to make energy blocks yourself, all this effort is essential. After carefully washing several kinds of fruits, John began to cut the fruit into equal-sized pieces according to the requirements of the recipe. After cutting, he added some ingredients, and then divided them into precise amounts and poured them into the fruit mixer one by one. Then, he turned on the machine, and with the humming sound of the machine, several kinds of fruit began to cross-mix and mix together. However, there may be failures in the production process. Either the time control is not accurate, or the mixing speed is not adjusted properly. After several attempts, John finally succeeded in making the first Pokémon Energy Cube suitable for Gyarados. Then, he placed it on the other side and began to take notes seriously, filling in every detail in detail. After recording, he started to make another energy cube without stopping. Until dark, John had several plates of energy cubes in front of him. Among them, the general number is the largest, and the water system is currently only suitable for Gyarados, and the rock system can be brought into the cave by Houndoom for Shakira's to eat. He deliberately did a little more, not forgetting that Boscodora also has the rock attribute. This is not only a thank you gift to it, but also to further maintain the good relationship between them. John currently has 2 Pokémon with evil attributes. If Shakira's successfully evolves into Bangiras, there will be 3. Does it mean that his main offensive direction will be positioned as evil in the future? Generally speaking, most of the king-level Pokémon trainers will begin to specialize in specific attributes. It is not the most powerful Pokémon in their team, he specializes in whatever attribute he belongs to. Instead, the main team must have more than 3 Pokémon of the same attribute that have reached the king level to meet the standard of specialization. Of course, there are exceptions, but such situations often require a lot of energy from the trainer. John just hasn't thought about his future development direction yet. Watching his Pokémon happily enjoying the energy cubes he made by himself, John couldn't help but feel proud. It's the most difficult to start from scratch. Since the evolution of Magikarp, John's luck seems to have skyrocketed. Now he has 2 quasi-gods that have not yet fully evolved, and the number of Pokémon has reached 6. And the 7th one will be teleported back to the Pokémon Center in Muda Town. John has consulted Kyunli about the relevant matters before, but he doesn't have the ability to implement it at present. If you want to buy a house, you may be able to do it if you grit your teeth. After all, there are countless wealth here. But it is not so easy to hire a Pokémon breeder. Besides, Ayami is not yet able to help him. She is determined to become John's exclusive Pokémon breeder and is working tirelessly in this field. John did not arrange any training tasks for the Pokémon at night. After all, it is just the beginning and John is not so cruel. Everything has a gradual process. Rushing may be counterproductive. John arranged for the 5 Pokémon to train in the morning, rest at noon to recuperate, continue training in the afternoon, and relax in the evening. He himself made full use of these free time to consult various relevant materials and research and make Pokémon energy blocks. John likes his current life very much. It's just that as time goes by, the amount of training will gradually increase. Chapter 43. For the next half-month, John increased the training volume every 5 days. Every time the training volume was increased, the Pokémon were tortured to the point of being miserable. However, after enduring the most difficult 2 days, they slowly got used to the new training intensity. During this half-month, John only asked Houndoom to enter the cave to deliver food, and he did not personally meet Shakira's and Bosctor. Gyarados has already shown signs of an imminent breakthrough, and John is also looking forward to it, wondering who will become his first gym-level Pokémon between it and Shakira's. John now has a truly profound experience in cultivating Pokémon. Unlike the game where you can gain a lot of experience by fighting in the wild, here, Pokémon must undergo systematic training before they can achieve a higher level of growth. The king-level Bosctor is almost a rare existence, and even the gym-level ones are few and far between. However, the situation of Pokémon is completely different when they are with their trainers. To sum it up in one sentence, it can change destiny. This not only depends on the knowledge mastered by the trainer himself, but also on the valuable experience that the ancestors have continuously summed up since humans and Pokémon coexisted peacefully. With various nutritional supplements and potions, Pokémon have the opportunity to break through their own limits and eventually compete with the legendary Pokémon. Tomorrow is the day to go to Yamanashi town to purchase supplies. At the same time, you can also sell the gold in your hand in exchange for some money for emergencies. There is still about a month before Xiaoao sets off. Maybe he can meet Xiaozai on the journey. If calculated according to the time algorithm of this world, Xiaozai should be 16 years old. After 2 years of travel, I really don't know how strong he is now. Although he came to the Hone region with only 1 Pikachu, after all, that is the Pikachu who can fight back and forth with anyone he meets, and it is definitely not to be underestimated. Also, if he travels with Xiaoao and Xiaosheng, wouldn't Zai's team only have 2 grown men? I really don't know if this will have any impact. By the way, there are a series of changes in the later period. He doesn't know whether it will be implemented a few years later, just like in the animation. For example, the Mega Evolution in the Kalos region in 3 years, or the powerful Z moves in the Alola region in 4 years, etc. While carefully recording the materials to be purchased in the notebook, John kept thinking about these questions in his mind. At this time, 2 cars were driving slowly in the forest not far from John. Haven't you contacted those researchers yet? The leading forest ranger captain frowned and asked anxiously. Captain, we can't contact them. The location where the doctors sent out the last distress signal is beyond the signal reception range. A team member responded helplessly, his tone full of anxiety. A team of forest rangers were talking anxiously at this time. Their main responsibility was to protect wild Pokémon, but when faced with a call for help, they had to choose to help without hesitation. The reason why they gathered urgently today was because a team of Pokémon researchers rashly entered the wilderness canyon. It was rumored that there were ruins here. Faced with the ruins, many researchers studying Pokémon would not miss it. However, the actions of these researchers often cause great trouble to rescuers. In order not to lag behind other research teams, they didn't even have time to contact the Alliance and wait for the Alliance to arrange Pokémon trainers for them to go together. There are very few researchers like Dr. Oak who are both doctors and powerful Pokémon trainers. Most researchers only know how to work hard, and some don't even have their own Pokémon. Because they have no time to take care of them, in their opinion, it is better to devote themselves to research instead of distracting themselves from taking care of Pokémon. In order to contribute to the development of this world, whether it is studying Pokémon or promoting technological development, there are many people who are willing to take on challenges regardless of their own danger. Captain, we may be seriously short of manpower. The rescue team closest to us has been temporarily transferred to another area, and the KO conference will start in a few days. A team member said to the captain with a wry smile. The captain sighed heavily and said distressedly, why did it have to be at this time? Why? Don't we apply to the league and urgently call nearby trainers to participate in the rescue? Another team member suggested. But this place, forget it, let the league leaders worry about it. The captain hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded, but he didn't have too much hope in his heart. Night fell quietly, and John was sitting with the Pokémon, happily enjoying a warm dinner. More than half a month has passed, and the 5 Pokémon get along very well, except for Shakira's. John couldn't help thinking in his heart, I don't know how strong it is now. Beep beep. Just then, John's watch suddenly rang rapidly. Thinking that there had been no movement for half a month, this was the first time there was a response, and he answered the call with curiosity. Mexi Mexi. John was the first to say hello, but the voice of a woman on the other end of the phone seemed a little anxious. Excuse me, is this John? Where are you in the Wasteland Canyon? I think I'm at the entrance. What's wrong? John didn't ask who the other person was. Since he could get through the watch, it meant he was the contact person of the Hone Alliance. He asked curiously. Although it's already night, a research team has disappeared not far from you. Please go to the meeting point immediately. I hope you can try to rescue the missing people while ensuring your own safety. I'll get ready. Also, how can I find the meeting point? The other party's concerned tone made John feel good. Anyway, he was just training Pokémon here. An arrow will appear on your watch. Just go in the direction of the arrow. Understood. John agreed without hesitation. Then the other party immediately interrupted the communication. He might be contacting other trainers urgently. Chapter 44. John saw that the other party had terminated the communication directly, and he knew that time was indeed extremely urgent. However, since they were in this wilderness canyon, they could not do without the help of ground-type or rock-type Pokémon. John acted quickly, picked up the flashlight, and walked into the cave with the wolfhound. John was already very familiar with everything in the cave, not only the structure of the cave, but also the Pokémon that lived here. The road was smooth, and John soon arrived at Boscderlaw's residence. It seemed that the training should be over, and Shakira's was leaning against the wall and resting. After hearing the movement, Shakira's rushed over quickly, and John also opened his arms and hugged it tightly. It seemed that after just changing the new trainer, it was left to Yuzuki to be raised, and it was still a little anxious in its heart. Fortunately, every day, either the wolfhound or houndel would bring it food and energy cubes. From the communication with them, Shakira's also knew that John had actually been outside the cave, but it was not suitable for humans to stay deep in the cave for a long time, so it was inconvenient to come down. Seeing John at this time, it was so happy that it didn't know what to do, and it made a sound similar to complaining or acting like a spoiled child. Okay, Shakira's, I received a task, and I may need your help. Shakira's nodded firmly without hesitation after hearing it, and then John let it go and stuffed an energy cube into its mouth. Boscodora, thank you for these days. Seeing that Boscodora was staring at him intently, John walked up and put down some food. It nodded and called to Shakira's, as if to encourage it. Anyway, John couldn't understand the language of Pokémon, and didn't know how many people in the world had this ability. After returning to his camp, John took back all the Pokémon, and bribed a few Kokodoras with Pokémon food to help watch the house. Wild Kokodora usually live on stones, and occasionally eat some tree fruits. However, they only tasted Pokémon food for the first time half a month ago. Faced with this delicious food, they readily agreed, and then naturally moved into John's camp. John put on thick shoulder straps so that the claws of the toucan could hold him firmly. After a period of adaptation to flying, John was no longer as panicked as the first time. He looked at the arrow on his watch, which guided the direction of the toucan's flight. After John's half-month training, the toucan's endurance has been significantly improved, and it can fly slowly for an hour without any stops. The meeting place is a flat area in the forest, where there are several wooden houses, which must be the residence of the forest rangers. At this time, there are already several people in uniform walking back and forth outside. John slowly landed and then took back the toucan. Hello, my name is John, and I'm the trainer that the Alliance urgently summoned. After seeing John, someone immediately came forward, and John spoke first. Hello. Seeing John's arrival, he seemed very grateful, but there was still a trace of worry on his face. After all, there are too few people here. So far, only 5 trainers, including John, have been summoned. As for the people camping in this area, almost all of them are ordinary trainers, and they don't even meet the threshold for participating in the rescue. Then the ranger immediately led John to the inside of the house. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening, but because one of the people who lost contact was a leader in Pokémon fossil research, the Alliance sent some people in addition to them, but they were on their way. John just sat down and found that there were only 4 trainers present besides him. First of all, thank you for participating in this rescue operation. Everyone, take a break. In half an hour, no matter if there are still people present, we will set off. A ranger who should be the captain said briefly to John and the other 4, and then left after seeing them nod. It is estimated that he went to adjust the team or make plans. Hello, my name is Gia, and I am a traveling trainer. A man with reddish-brown hair, about 20 years old, stood up and said to John. Hello, my name is John, nice to meet you. Gia? It seems that he is the one who defeated Xiaozai the next year and finally won the league championship. I didn't expect to meet him here, but he didn't attend the Feng Yuan League conference. Gia, this guy is a trainer who just went out for a trip. I don't know what the league thinks. Can such a person help? The first man who arrived was also about 20 years old. After seeing John, he could tell from the immaturity on his face that John had not experienced any wind and sun. John just smiled awkwardly, as if the other party was quite accurate. He really just went out for a trip and became a Pokémon trainer only a month ago. Hey, how can you talk like that? If you are really so good, you can just go on this rescue operation by yourself. Another black-haired female trainer in neutral clothes stood up. She was disgusted with the person who just mocked John. Everyone grew up from a novice, so why mock the younger generation like this? Little brother, don't worry, stand next to your sister, I will protect you. The female trainer immediately looked at the male trainer just now, and Jia hurriedly started to persuade them to stop fighting. Okay, we are all here to help. Zhen, apologize to John. No matter what, responding to the Alliance's call and participating in the rescue is already amazing. Well, I have something to explain. Although I just came out to travel, I am already an elite trainer. After listening to John's words, the trainer named Zhen laughed. Little friend, don't joke. If you are an elite trainer, I am a gym-level trainer. How about going out to practice? John didn't want to cause any trouble, but the other party's chattering really made him feel a little uncomfortable. It's less than half an hour before departure, you two. Jia hurriedly spoke out to stop him, but Zhen said confidently. Jia, don't worry, I promise to let him know the gap between trainers in one move. Chapter 45. The rangers looked at each other and did not stop the quarrel. Just as Zhen said, if John was really just an ordinary trainer, they would not agree to John's rescue. Brother John, don't pay attention to him. Everyone is a newcomer. The female trainer who helped John, Junko, also hurriedly spoke out to stop him, but John smiled and refused. Thank you, I don't know your name yet. My name is John. My name is Junko, okay John, you stand behind me later, I will protect you. Junko said as she pulled John and tried her best to persuade them to stop fighting. She liked John as soon as she saw him. Of course, except for Jia, the men present were not very good looking. No need, since I'm here to participate in the rescue, I will definitely not drag my feet. Sometimes, if you want to prove your strength, you only need a Pokémon battle. What's the point of saying more? It's still not convincing. Seeing this, Junko felt that it was not good to stop him forcefully, and Jia was not very comfortable with Zhen. But he still followed him. He was really curious about where John's confidence came from. Elite trainer, to be honest, he just reached the threshold of elite trainer when he was 16 years old. But fortunately, after having Metagross and Meowth, he has now successfully reached the level of gym level trainer. So, he still has a lot of say in this temporary team. Several people walked to the open space outside together. After watching them come out, the captain was also told that John and Zhen had a conflict, so he was ready to use a battle to prove his strength. The captain didn't say much about their actions. These 5 trainers were not under his control. Anyway, each of them should carry 6 Pokémon. Even if 1 or 2 lost their combat ability, the impact on the rescue operation would not be great. John and Zhen looked at each other, and then both of them quickly threw out their Pokémon. Go, Shakira's! Go, Zubat! The 2 Pokémon appeared in the air in an instant, but Shakira's powerful momentum and brilliance completely overshadowed Zubat. Regardless of whether Shakira's can defeat Zubat in the end, John has made it impossible for everyone present to despise him. After all, Banjara's is a quasi-god level existence. Once it evolves, it will definitely be a powerful gym level existence. You attack first. Hearing John's somewhat contemptuous voice, Zhen gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Zubat, use ultrasonic waves. Dig a hole to avoid it. John commanded calmly. Shakira's immediately rotated his body at high speed, like a sharp drill, and drilled directly into the ground, successfully avoiding the ultrasonic waves emitted by Zubat. Use the sharp stone blade. After John gave the order, Shakira's instantly emerged from behind Zubat, and then countless sharp stones appeared around him, like dense bullets, and fired rapidly in the direction of Zubat. Use high-speed movement to dodge, and then use Shadow Ball. Zubat's wings flapped rapidly, evading the attack nimbly, and then turned his head to use a powerful Shadow Ball. Use the power of gems. Shakira's body instantly burst into a strong and dazzling light, and a bright gem light collided fiercely with the Shadow Ball, making a violent explosion. The powerful energy impact raised the dust and completely covered Shakira's figure. Shakira's, use the sandstorm. John gave the order again, and Shakira's immediately summoned a rolling dust all over the sky. Zhen's movements paused instantly, and for a moment he didn't know how to attack. Shakira's turned his head slightly to look at John, and then a golden light began to condense on his forehead. Use the Destruction Death Ray. John immediately understood, it turned out that this was a new skill that Shakira's had learned. A powerful Destruction Death Ray was shot out at a very fast speed, and Zubat was hit directly without being able to dodge. Then it was shaky in mid-air, and Shakira's body burst out with strong light again. This is the white light of evolution. Jia couldn't help but shout out loudly. In fact, even if he didn't shout, everyone knew it clearly. Under Boscodora's training, Shakira's finally reached the critical point of evolution. This battle directly prompted it to take that critical step. Soon, in the evolution in the white light, Shakira's figure underwent a huge change, and began to grow hands, feet and a head again. When the white light dissipated, a majestic and green-armored Banjara's appeared in front of everyone. With the completion of the evolution, Banjara's opened his mouth and roared to the sky, and the huge momentum directly set off a strong wave of air. Looking at Banjara's in front of him, his strength has undergone a qualitative change, and he has become a gym-level Pokémon. It looked at the big mouth bat falling from the air, rushed forward directly, and caught it steadily. After putting it on the ground, it happily ran to John to show off its majestic figure. Jia also saw Banjira's, and suddenly he also had the idea of trying its strength. Pa pa pa! Unknowingly, the surroundings were full of forest rangers. Looking at the majestic Banguilas, they immediately felt more confident about this rescue operation. Congratulations, John and Banguilas! Jia walked over with a smile, stretched out his hand to John and Banguilas. The attitudes of several people changed drastically. Even Junko, who had just helped John, stared at him intently with bright eyes. Okay, okay. Jia once again played the role of a peacemaker. Zhen also walked over at this time and said to John. I take back what I said just now, you are a powerful trainer. I didn't mean to do anything, Zhen, sometimes Pokémon battles are indeed more useful than explanations. John's words were recognized by everyone. After Zhen apologized, these people were temporarily united. Congratulations, let's get ready to go. The captain of the Rangers was delighted. The quality of the trainers they had gathered this time was quite good. Not only was there a gym-level trainer like Tetsuya, but even the last trainer to arrive, John, had a gym-level Bangiras. You know, gym level is almost the ceiling for dealing with wild Pokémon. Chapter 46. After John took back the bank IRAs, the team started to set off. This time they didn't drive, because driving at night in the Wasteland Canyon would undoubtedly be a dead end. Accidentally falling into a pit or crushing a resting Pokémon would be a major obstacle to the rescue. John had hardly explored the Wasteland Canyon in depth. He only built a simple shelter on the edge and successfully maintained a good state of peaceful coexistence with the Boscodora tribe. Although the Wasteland Canyon is extremely vast, John doesn't think there will be more powerful Pokémon here than Boscodora. After all, reality is not the kind of monster killing and leveling game where the closer you get to the center, the stronger the Pokémon will be. Even around the most powerful gym, there are still a large number of primary Pokémon in the forest outside, and there are also many elite ones. Moreover, the quality of Pokémon there is not necessarily more than that in Kana City. During the 3-hour wait, the Rangers have successfully obtained the enthusiastic assistance of many Pokémon. These Pokémon temporarily acted as mounts, carrying everyone to speed up their pace. Otherwise, if they only rely on their feet to walk, they really don't know when they can reach the location where the researcher lost contact. John and Jia sat on the back of a huge tropical dragon one after the other. Although they can each summon their own Pokémon as a means of transportation, considering the unknown situation they will face next, the two wisely decided to save their energy. Jia, didn't you participate in the Keiho conference? During the long journey, John had nothing to do, so he asked Jia curiously with interest. I just returned from another area. The time was too hasty and I didn't have time to participate. So that's the case. No wonder he would appear here when the Keiho conference is about to start. Jia, do you mean that you will also participate in the Hone Alliance Keiho conference next year? Also? It seems that we are likely to become strong competitors in the future. Jia quickly understood the meaning of John's words, and the two chatted very enthusiastically. He was not nervous at all because he was about to step into an unknown area, even if it was only a little bit. John was a little surprised. When he was on the periphery, there was no obvious wind and sand except that the air was a little dry. However, the further he went inside, the stronger the wind and sand became. Because the development speed of the Hone region is too fast, it has seriously affected the balance of the ecology, so this is the punishment given to us by the god of the earth Grotto. Jia saw John's inner doubts, so he explained to him. Grotto? Is it the first level beast in the Hone region that is subconsciously ignored every time when the beasts fight? John has never believed this kind of rhetoric. After all, Groudon has been sleeping all the time, so how could he care about the development of human beings, right? This is just a belief in the mythical beasts in the Hone region. John would not forcefully correct Tetsuya's point of view. This was his personal belief issue, and John had no right to interfere. He just listened. Fortunately, Shakira's evolved into Bangiras. In such a place, the increase in Bangira's strength was extraordinary. John and the others also gradually fell from the air. The strong wind and sand here were no longer suitable for continued flying. I really can't imagine how the group of researchers found this place. Stop! The captain of the forest rangers in the front suddenly raised his hand and shouted quickly. After hearing his voice, all the Pokémon stopped in response. The road ahead is no longer suitable for these Pokémon. Xiaoa, ACI, you stay here, and the rest of you will explore in groups. Jia, the 5 of you will follow me in a group. The ranger said to John and the other 5 trainers who were summoned. No problem. Jia did not raise any objections, so John and the others would not say anything. Moreover, John's live broadcasts in his previous life were mostly based on jungles. This was the first time he had set foot in a place like this in 2 lives. It was obvious that he lacked experience and really needed the guidance and help of his predecessors. Please release your Pokémon that are suitable for this place. For a while, everyone released their Pokémon one after another: Radon, Tyrannosaurus, Charmeleon, Nidoking, Metagross, and Bangiras. What a coincidence! Coincidentally, everyone can ride on their own Pokémon. After the team walked for a while, John gradually felt a little tired. Although they had only advanced a short distance, the harsh environment around them had a bad impact on his psychology. I believe that they all have this feeling more or less. He took out a bottle of water from his backpack and drank it in big gulps, and by the way, he stuffed an energy block suitable for evil Pokémon into Bangiras. Fortunately, the ranger had already prepared thick clothes for everyone. The temperature difference between day and night here is very large, and John has experienced it a long time ago. Moreover, in order to resist the wind and sand, helmets, goggles, masks, etc. have been prepared for everyone. 6 strong light flashlights are constantly searching for clues in this wind and sand. Captain, have we reached the place where those researchers disappeared? Zhe was obviously a little uncomfortable, and he immediately asked the captain of the ranger. It's nearby. Those of you who have traveled know that in places like this, the signal is often biased. The captain of the rangers could only patiently explain to John and the others. The captain of the rangers is called Ishida. He is already 35 years old and has been a ranger for 20 years. He is not uncomfortable with these harsh places. However, among the trainers who were summoned, one of them, who was riding Nidoking, wailed in pain. I can't hold on any longer. Banguilas, have you learned any tricks to resist the wind and sand? John lowered his head and asked his mount, Banguilas. There was cold sweat on Banguila's forehead. How could there be such a trick? If there was, it would have been used long ago. Realizing the look in Banguila's eyes, John touched his head a little embarrassedly. No, he touched his helmet. The trainer of the Tyrannosaurus Rex is Junko, who just helped John. She hid behind the Tyrannosaurus Rex and obviously heard what John said to Bangiras. At this time, she was covering her mouth and smiling at John. Chapter 47. Ha ha ha. Such an embarrassing scene was seen by everyone, and John laughed awkwardly. His laughter seemed a little dry in the wind and sand. Have you heard about the ancient ruins in this area these days? In order to ease everyone's nervousness, Jai asked and tried to divert everyone's attention. I checked before I came. Junko raised her little hand on the back of the Tyrannosaurus Rex and immediately said. It is said that a traveler uploaded a photo through an online forum when he was lost. The shadow of the mysterious ruins and the outline of Regiskairu were captured on the screen. But he never appeared again later, and netizens speculated that he might have died here. Is it online? But why can't I find it? Someone asked in confusion. The news has been blocked, because Regiskairu is a legendary Pokémon and a 3rd-level god. This type of Pokémon can be legally captured. Junko hit the nail on the head. Most of the level 3 gods have tribes. Perhaps there are hundreds of level 3 gods in the world, but no one knows how they reproduce. All level 3 gods that appear in front of people are at least quasi-king level Pokémon. To subdue them, you must rely on advanced technology or absolutely powerful force. There are many people in the world who have level 3 gods. Almost every family has trainers who can get the recognition of the beasts, such as Latios, Latias, the 3 sacred birds, the 3 sacred pillars, and the 3 sacred mushrooms. Everyone understands what Junko said. It must be that Regiskairu was targeted by someone, so they quickly covered up the news. But they didn't expect the disappearance of the researcher team. The Alliance had no choice but to make rescuing the researchers their top priority. If we can subdue it, then there is hope for the champion of the Keiho conference. One of the trainers began to fantasize about the beautiful scene of using Regiskairu to defeat all opponents and finally win the championship of the Keiho conference. But the captain, Ishida, poured cold water on him. Every year, many people have sacrificed their lives to capture this kind of powerful Pokémon. Regis Jalu is at least at the quasi-king level. I suggest you don't have such unrealistic ideas. His meaning is very clear. You are not its opponent at all. Don't die in vain. Although it is called a god, it is also a wild Pokémon and will not show mercy to humans. Hey! John took a sip of water while holding the flashlight. At this moment, his eyes suddenly flashed. Look, there seems to be something there. What is it? Ishida quickly rode the fire-breathing camel back. Under the light irradiated by John, there seemed to be a little different color from the yellow earth. When everyone walked over and took a closer look, it turned out to be a traveler's backpack, and it seemed to be carrying two pale bones. John was the first to react. He immediately asked. Could it be the backpack of the traveler who disappeared after taking photos of the ruins in Regis Jalu? Junko immediately went over to check, but she couldn't identify it either. After all, the photo didn't capture the traveler's appearance or the backpack he was carrying. Everyone, split into groups of 2, explore in different directions, don't exceed a distance of 200 meters, and come back together regardless of whether you have found anything or not. Ishida said decisively. In fact, there are 3 directions, the front and the left and right, so when you are in the wild, you still need the assistance of Pokémon. Here, except for Ishida, even the strongest Zha has not much experience in this harsh environment. However, facing Ishida's arrangement, several people felt that it was quite reasonable. It was still night, not suitable for excessive dispersion, and a group of 2 was already a very reasonable arrangement. Although the trainer could not identify the direction, the Pokémon under the seat would not get lost. This was the world they lived in. John, let's be in a group. The Tyrannosaurus approached quickly, and Junko decided to be in a group with John after hearing Ishida's arrangement. No problem. John had no objection to this, and he still had a good impression of Junko. After all, Junko was able to stand up for him when they didn't know each other, and she was a kind-hearted trainer. John, aren't you afraid? John couldn't help asking, looking at John who was looking for traces with a flashlight and a serious face. After hearing this he gently adjusted his goggles and said. Of course I'm afraid, but since I've chosen to be a trainer, I'll have to face such dangers sooner or later, not to mention that I'm with Banguilas now. John gently stroked Banguilas's head, and it roared cheerfully and full of power. It's really hard to believe that you just came out to travel. Junko was surprised. I've been traveling since I got the initial Pokémon, and I've experienced emergency gatherings several times, but never in such a bad environment as now. John smiled. He couldn't say that he had been traveling alone for many years. However, I have some understanding of this kind of environment. The first point is the sense of direction. Once you get lost, it is almost impossible to survive. The second is the temperature difference between day and night. Captain Ishida and his team have solved it for us. The same is true for equipment. Also, you must have enough drinking water. In fact, the most important point is to travel together. In summary, the safety factor of our rescue operation this time is still very high. John obviously felt Junko's uneasy heart, so he spoke to comfort her. Thank you, John, it's a good thing I'm in the same group with you. Junko was infected by John's words, and her fear of this harsh environment was no longer so strong. You said, if the backpack is really a traveler who took the video, then does it mean that the ruins are nearby? John estimated that he might be about 200 meters away at this time. Facing the increasingly fierce sandstorm, he analyzed to Junko. Under normal circumstances, it takes a certain amount of time to turn into bones after death. Even if you are eaten by the Pokémon here and then blown away by the sandstorm, it cannot be completed in a short time. John, I think you are right. Junko pointed her finger at the location where John's light was shining. Chapter 48. What? After hearing Junko's words, John immediately looked in the direction she pointed. In a trance, he seemed to really see a vague shadow similar to the ruins. What should we do? Go and take a look now. Junko asked anxiously. No, go back and report the situation immediately, saving people is the priority. John shook his head decisively. It was completely unnecessary to venture alone, not to mention that there was an important task of saving people. Banguiras, and Tyrannosaurus. Help us remember the location here, and then we will go back to the meeting place immediately. John ordered. Banguiras nodded, and Tyrannosaurus quickly turned around after receiving Junko's signal. After returning to the place where they had just separated, the other 4 people had already returned. Captain Ishida, we found traces of similar ruins. John said quickly. Is it true? Not only Ishida, but the others all showed joy on their faces, overjoyed. Probably, but we didn't approach rashly. John nodded hesitantly, but Ishida was very satisfied with John's approach. You're right. Don't forget that we have a mission now. If we go in and explore before reporting, let alone whether it's safe inside, the rescue will be delayed. The signal here is not good. Ishida took out paper and pen from his backpack, quickly wrote down the message to other rangers, let the fire-breathing camel take it away, and then let the armored Tyrannosaurus carry him forward. The so-called ruins are completely made of stone, but after countless years of wind and sun, they have become yellow earth. If there were no gate at the door, and its unique structure was different from the natural entrance of the cave, it might be regarded as an ordinary cave. Stay alert, take back the large Pokémon first, and then we all need to rely on smaller and more flexible Pokémon to protect our safety at all times. A group of people have walked to the cave entrance, and Captain Ishida keeps teaching the best way to explore the wild. Why? If it comes to deterrence, larger Pokémon will be better. The trainer who has not spoken to John, Xiao Feng, raised his own question. Captain Ishida knew he couldn't rush, so he patiently explained. After all, the ruins have existed for a very long time, and it's hard to guarantee whether the passage inside is still solid and strong. If it's a large Pokémon, it must be very heavy. If it collapses, the consequences will be disastrous. But how do we open the gate? Junko, didn't you say that the traveler took photos of the ruins and Regis Jalu? Or does Regis Jalu not actually live in the ruins? John asked a series of questions. Also, how did the research team get in? You asked a good question, go for the strange force. Ishida threw out a muscular Pokémon with 4 arms and limbs. Strength, push the door of this ruins open. Strength immediately stepped forward, bursting out with great strength, and the door began to slowly push inward. John also hurriedly shouted. Banguiras, come forward to help. You go too. The combined strength of several Pokémon pushed the door open at once. John looked at Ishida curiously, wondering how he knew that the door of this ruins was opened like this. Ha ha ha. Ishida said embarrassedly. Actually, I just wanted to try it, but I didn't expect it to succeed. Speechless, it's a pity that John still wanted to ask him for advice, but this uncle may just not want to expose his talent. After entering the ruins, without the wanton invasion of wind and sand, John and his friends finally felt a lot more comfortable. Afterwards, everyone followed Ishida's arrangement and released smaller Pokémon one after another. John threw out Houndoom, and when it comes to exploration, its experience is much richer than that of the Wolfhound. Ishida released a Sunrock. I didn't expect that Ishida has quite a lot of Pokémon. Generally speaking, many things rangers do with wild Pokémon. They have a tool that can temporarily control wild Pokémon. Come out, Meowth. Zhe also released his trump card Meowth. As soon as it appeared, the momentum was completely different. It was dressed like a handsome cowboy, but what was surprising was that it was actually a gym-level Meowth. No wonder his trump card was not Metagross, but this strange Meowth. Zhen released a poison butterfly, Xiao Chun released a natural bird, and Xiao Feng released the one that came out was the thunder Pokémon. My Tenro can predict danger. We may have to rely on it for the rest of the journey. Toro, use flash. Xiao Feng gave the order. The thunder Pokémon's body instantly emitted a strong light, instantly illuminating the entire cave. You guys are actually a team, right? Ishida never thought that the Pokémon that were randomly released by the trainers who were temporarily summoned would cooperate so well. John's Houndoom can find the direction of the researcher by smell, and Tetsuya's Meowth has only one characteristic, that is, it has super strong combat power and can fight. Xiao Feng's thunder Pokémon is responsible for illuminating the cave, and Xiao Kun's Tenro predicts danger. Both his own and Zhen's Pokémon can fly, and their role is more to explore the way. Houndoom, can you smell the smell of others besides us? Houndoom began to smell carefully around, then nodded and began to explore the interior of the ruins. The thunder spirit quickly walked behind Houndoom, and its flash trick calmed everyone's original nervous mood. Sunrock and Poison Butterfly began to shuttle back and forth in the air to explore, and the natural bird stood on Xiao Kun's shoulder. If it hadn't turned its head from time to time, people who didn't know would think it was asleep. The only gym-level Pokémon, Meowth, walked at the end of the team to ensure the safety of the whole team. The road was extremely difficult to walk, but it was not because it was narrow, but because many places were uneven. However, since they had already arrived here, no one would complain. In terms of the comprehensive quality of trainers, they were actually quite good. Houndoom was experienced, and without John's special instructions, he automatically left marks along the way. I don't know where those researchers are and how far away they are. At this time, they clearly felt that this road seemed to extend deep into the ground. And at this moment, the natural bird suddenly issued a warning cry. Chapter 49. Bang, bang, bang. Sun Rock, use your telekinesis. Several huge rocks suddenly fell from the top. Everyone's eyes had been fixed on the front before, and they had never paid attention to the top. Fortunately, there was an experienced person like Ishida in the team. Otherwise, this group of people would probably have to die here, and John was no exception. Seeing Sun Rock use telekinesis to gently put down the rocks, John and others were all scared. Although this place is called a ruin, it is almost completely underground. In fact, it is similar to a cave, but the wall has been specially treated, and the digging tricks of ordinary Pokémon cannot penetrate it at all. Everyone, be careful. In this place, the danger is often not from the front or the back, but maybe above your head or under your feet. Ishida said to John and others with a serious expression. He did not look down on these young people, but instead felt sincere admiration for their unyielding spirit. But why did the huge rock on the top suddenly fall down? Junko said while stroking her chest. This ruins should have existed for a long time, and many of the internal structures have aged. It is normal for such a situation to occur. Ishida explained patiently, so we must be more careful on the road ahead. But the call of the natural bird has not stopped. Just now, everyone's attention was attracted by the boulder, and only John noticed the situation of the natural bird. At the same time, a loud sound came out, and the sound waves were layered, one wave higher than the other, and everyone's face was condensed. Obviously, this sound wave could never be made by a Pokémon. It's Zubat. Ishida frowned and said with a headache, it seems that the sound just now disturbed them to rest. I didn't expect that there would be so many wild Pokémon here. Jai also said helplessly. Under the shining of the Thunder Spirit, small Pokémon with blue bodies flew out of the darkness. Each Zubat flashed red light and approached John and his group aggressively. A few Zubats flew out from the back, and there was the only final evolved Zubat, which was obviously the leader of this group. But why are there Zubats living here? Junko obviously didn't realize the seriousness of the matter yet, and asked curiously. At the moment she spoke, hundreds of Zubats opened their mouths and let out a series of sharp screams. It's ultrasound! Ishida shouted quickly, everyone, cover your ears quickly. John and Tetsuya reacted first and quickly covered their ears with both hands. The remaining three were a beat slower and were hit by ultrasound, groaning in pain. Sun Rock, use illusion. Meow, use 100,000 volts. Haraga, use jet flame. After Ishida, Tetsuya, and John survived the attack of ultrasound, they gave orders almost at the same time. It's Shadow Ball. Golbat saw the Zubats being attacked by the Pokémon in front of him, and quickly used Shadow Ball to support them. Sun Rock, use Mystic Guard. As soon as Ishida's order was issued, Sun Rock immediately rushed to the front, and the green protective shield opened instantly, perfectly blocking several Shadow Balls. Meowth, use the surrounding walls, get close, and use Iron Tail on Spat. Horch, use Flame Vortex to restrict Zubat's actions. John and Jet also looked at each other, showing a very good tacit understanding. Meowth was extremely fast, running quickly along the stone wall, and Horch sprayed a flame vortex, directly trapping several Zubats in the middle. The scattered Zubats gathered again at this time and attacked John and others. Metallica, use telekinesis. Gia quickly threw out Metagross's Pokeball. As soon as Metagross appeared, its eyes immediately glowed blue. No matter how hard the Zubats struggled, they could not break free from Metagross's powerful restraints. Sun Rock, use telekinesis to restrict the movements of Spat. Ishida judged from Spat's pre-action that it was about to use its ultimate move, so Sun Rock quickly used telekinesis to firmly fix its petite body. In such a confined space, you must not make too much noise. Junko, are you okay? The battle over there had already shown a one-sided trend. John finally freed his hands and pulled up Junko, who had been sitting on the ground covering her ears. Tianran Bird also emerged from the chaos caused by the ultrasound. Came out of the chaos, and also kept comforting Junko. Thank you, John. Junko carefully released the hand covering her ears, then grabbed John's hand and stood up with difficulty. It's okay, the effect of ultrasound is time limited, and it will be healed soon. Looking at John, who was looking at her gently, Junko also began to smile sweetly. Meow Meow's steel tail hit the body of the crossbat head on, and with a miserable cry, Ishida quickly picked up the Pokémon catcher. Capture begins. Then Ishida pressed the switch, and a gyroscope-shaped object kept spinning around the body of the crossbat, and then formed a circle of dazzling white light, which shrank rapidly and moved closer to the crossbat. Capture completed. Captain Ishida, is that a Pokémon catcher? John asked curiously because it was the first time he saw this thing. Yes, this thing can not only see the status of Pokémon, and the special moves that can be used, but also various information. We Pokémon Rangers rely on this to find Pokémon that are suitable to assist us in combat. Seeing that the crossbat no longer had any hostility, Ishida also breathed a sigh of relief and explained to John. I see. This is a high-tech product, John said he wanted it too. Seeing that the crossbat had been controlled by Ishida, John and Tetsuya also ordered their Pokémon to stop attacking. Crossbat, control your companions to stop, we have no ill will towards you. After hearing Ishida's voice, the crossbat flapped its wings, nodded, and emitted waves of sound waves, and Zubat also quieted down. Are you all okay? Tetsuya quickly pulled up Xiaofeng and Ajin and asked with concern. There was a buzzing sound in my ears, and I felt a little dizzy. After Xiaofeng and Ajin stood up, they were both a little shaky. Ishida took a look at their condition and said helplessly. We can only stop the action and rest for a while. Chapter 50. Everyone prepared their own food. Except for Ishida, John and the others sat down and began to eat food to replenish their energy. Houndoom received a portion of Pokémon food prepared by John, and rested beside John after eating. Crossbat, have you seen a group of people wearing white clothes coming in these days? Ishida did not slack off at all, and took advantage of everyone's rest time to ask the natives here. The crossbat kept flapping its wings in front of him, thinking for a while, and then turned to one of the big mouth bats and ordered it, and the big mouth bat left here immediately. Also, how did you get in here? Before, Ishida had several guesses about the situation here, and after seeing the crossbats, he further confirmed his guesses. It seems that there is more than one entrance and exit here, so there will be no less wild Pokémon inside. But it is also true that there are hundreds of crossbats in the tribe. If there is no food supply, they would have starved to death long ago. The crossbat immediately nodded in one direction, and then began to fly around to express its meaning. John and others looked at the crossbat, confused, and had no idea what it wanted to say, but Ishida understood. So that's it, the area of this ruins is very large, and when you usually go out to find food, you always go through the entrance over there, right? After hearing this, the crossbat immediately nodded. Is this okay? John looked at Ishida in disbelief. How did he see that? It's no wonder John is like this. In the forest, he has been in contact with wild Pokémon for more than 20 years, and Ishida can understand many of their body languages. Not only Ishida, as long as you get along with Pokémon for a long time, you will naturally have such a tacit understanding. After a while, John saw the big mouth bat flying over with something in its mouth from a distance. After seeing it clearly, the only female Junko leaned her head on John's shoulder next to her. She closed her eyes and screamed even though she could not see clearly. Ah! John's heart also trembled. This was the first time he saw a human head in his 2 lives. That's right, a single human head, the meat on it had been eaten by more than half, with only a little bit of meat left, and the eyeballs were gone. What is this? Ishida had seen too many such scenes, and he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. He quickly took out a few photos from his backpack. These were photos of everyone in the missing research team. With the remaining little meat, he began to identify them one by one. John and others didn't say anything, turned their heads to another place, waiting for Ishida's answer. Did you attack? Forkbat shook his head, and then started a series of actions. Ishida had no doubt that under his capture, Pokémon would not lie. Captain Ishida, what's going on? The crossbats said that they had just left the ruins to look for food last night and returned near daytime. Then they found this researcher in the ruins. In order not to waste food, they took his body back to replenish their nutrition. Gia stood up, resisting the discomfort. Fortunately, the big mouth bat had taken the researcher's head away again, and there was no pungent smell. So, there are still unknown dangers in this ruins, right? John also asked, and Ishida nodded. So, are you planning to go back, or continue the rescue mission with me? Junko was a little entangled. She was about to vomit. If she left at this time, she would not be blacklisted by the Alliance. After all, her personal safety was involved. Not only her, but Xiao Feng also looked at Ishida with a difficult expression. Ah Zhen looked at it and his expression was normal. I want to continue the mission, Captain Ishida. Gia was the first to express his opinion. It was his principle not to back down when faced with difficulties. John looked at him. No wonder he would become the torch runner of the next Keiho conference. He was indeed qualified. I'll go too. John. John quickly pulled John and wanted him to go back with her. John shook his head. He had an adventurous spirit, otherwise he would not have gone to the most dangerous mountain alone. Although he fell into the valley and died in the end, he became the current John. However, John also learned his lesson. The most powerful here is undoubtedly the Quasi King or King level Regis Chalu. Looking at Ishida, he must have a plan to deal with it. What's more, the rest of the wild Pokémon this time may not be gym level. There are Gyarados and Banshee. With Kira's and the others around, John wasn't too worried. Junko, you guys go back first. Junko shook his head. Judging from her reaction after seeing the researcher's miserable state, I believe Ishida won't let her continue the adventure. There will definitely be more situations like this later. She can't control her fear, and she's afraid that it will bring greater danger. After all, they are already invaders to the wild Pokémon in the ruins. But the first one to raise his hand was Xiao Feng. He said a little discouraged. I choose to quit. If you don't have a Pokémon with a flash trick, Raijin will go with you for the time being. Okay, be careful on the way back. Ishida was not disappointed. This is human nature. Everyone has something to fear. At the beginning, he didn't expect things to be so serious. Junko, and everyone, be careful. Finally, Junko also made a decision. She and Xiao Feng were originally trainer partners traveling together. After Xiao Feng spoke, she was more shaken from wanting to quit. Be careful on the way back, you should meet up with the other team first. However, to John's surprise, Ah Zhen actually chose to stay. He laughed at himself. After all, his strength was not the best, so what qualifications did he have to judge others? Then, the remaining 4 people watched Junko and Xiao Feng leave. Fork-shaped bat, please help us lead the way. Still in the capture device, Fork-shaped bat will naturally not refuse any decision of Ishida. As he went deeper into the ruins, Ishida's face became more and more ugly. John also noticed this situation and asked hurriedly. Captain Ishida, what happened again? Since John was walking at the back and did not see the situation in front clearly, he walked forward and found a crossroads in this place. To his surprise, Houndoom actually shook his head at them, and it could not tell the direction. It seems that there is something strange here that affects Houndoom's sense of smell. But Houndoom still shook his head at John. Ishida immediately guessed what Houndoom was trying to say. Houndoom, are you saying that there is a human scent on all 3 roads?